On the third day of my marriage to Liam Vance, I boarded the luxury yacht headed for the Caribbean. It was a wedding gift from my father, 3 decks, a private cinema, and a heated pool. "Elara," my dad had said, "everything I've built in my life will be yours someday. Your happiness is my happiness." I was so moved I could barely speak, just hugged his arm like a little girl. Liam stood beside us, his smile gentle and warm. "Don't worry, Dad," he'd said. "I'll protect Elara with my life." Thinking back on it now, the irony is nauseating. The first day on board, I started feeling dizzy. I'd never had a problem with boats before, but as soon as we left the port of Miami, a deep grogginess washed over me. I could barely stand. Liam helped me back to our suite, saying the Caribbean waves were probably just rougher than I was used to. He brought me a glass of warm water and a pill. "Take this motion sickness medicine," he said soothingly. "You'll feel better." I trusted him. From that day on, I took the pills he gave me. Every time, I'd fall into a deep, heavy sleep. On the rare occasion I woke in the middle of the night, my head felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Trying to speak was an effort. Liam assured me it was a normal side effect. "All motion sickness pills are like this," he'd say. "Don't worry." My in-laws were also on board. My father-in-law, Donovan Vance, and my mother-in-law, Sharon. Before the trip, they had been incredibly warm to me. Now, Sharon came to my room every day, fussing over me, bringing me soup and broth, cooing, "Our poor Elara, you're suffering so much." I genuinely thought of them as family. My father had only me, and my mother's health was fragile. I had always yearned for a large, bustling family. Liam came from a family of 3 brothers, and the warmth of their holiday gatherings, everyone crowded around a big table, was something I'd always craved. Looking back, I see how naive I was. On the afternoon of the 4th day, the dizziness was severe. Liam helped me back to our room, poured water, and held 2 white pills to my lips. I opened my mouth, and he helped me swallow them. He tucked me in, kissed my forehead, and said, "Get some sleep. I'll wake you for dinner." I heard his footsteps fade, as my eyelids grew heavy as lead. But just as I was about to drift off, a thought pierced the fog. My phone. I'd left it on a deck chair. That phone had the live feed to my mother's hospital room security camera. I checked it every day for peace of mind. I don't know where the strength came from, but I fought my way out of bed and, clinging to the wall, stumbled out of the room. The main deck was on the 2nd level. Our suite was on the 3rd. My legs felt like jelly as I clung to the railing, making my way down. At the turn of the stairs on the 2nd level, I couldn't go on. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. That's when I heard their voices, laughing, drifting from the deck. "Liam, how's the dosage control?" It was my father-in-law, Donovan. "Don't worry, Dad. 2 pills every evening, plus a little something in her dinner soup." Liam's voice was lazy, as if he were commenting on the weather. "By midnight, she won't even be able to lift an eyelid. So, we do it tonight?" My mother-in-law, Sharon, asked, her voice low. The sea breeze carried her words to me, each one crystal clear. "Tonight," Liam confirmed. I checked the forecast. "There's a storm rolling in after midnight. No one will be on deck. At 2 a.m. I'll help her up there, say we're getting some fresh air. One push, and it's over." I stood frozen at the corner, a cold sweat instantly soaking through my clothes. "What about her trust fund? When do we get our hands on it?" Donovan asked. "Already looked into it," Liam chuckled. "Her father set up an irrevocable trust. Upon her death, the spouse inherits $2 billion, every last cent. Should be in our account within 3 months. Sharon clapped her hands and laughed. "My son is a genius. And that silly girl thought she married a wonderful man. Calling me mom every day. It makes me want to vomit. Just bear it a little longer, Mom." Liam's voice was cold, unrecognizable. "After tonight, the show is over," he continued. "As for her parents, they're heading to Europe next week. I have people waiting in Paris. A simple traffic accident. And we'll have a nice little family reunion for all 3 of them." A wave of nausea hit me, and I nearly threw up right there. I clamped my hand over my mouth, my nails digging into my palm. The pain was sharp, real. The three of them were on the deck, clinking champagne glasses, celebrating how they would push me into the sea, how they would murder my parents, how they would steal the $2 billion my father had spent his life earning. And I was lying in my room like a fool, waiting for them to come and kill me. I forced myself to be calm. My legs were still weak, waves of dizziness washing over me. I couldn't pass out now. I couldn't let them find me. I bit my tongue and slowly, carefully, began to move back. Each step felt like walking on knives. Finally, I made it back to my room, locked the door, and slid to the floor. I pinched my thigh, hard, forcing myself to stay awake. Then I reached for my other phone, a backup I had hidden in a secret compartment of my closet, just in case. It had a single, untraceable SIM card. I turned on the audio recorder, slipped the phone into the pocket of my robe, and staggered to the balcony door. Our balcony was directly above the main deck, shielded by a railing. From here, I could hear their voices perfectly. "Is the champagne for tonight ready?" Liam asked. "Of course," Donovan said. "That champagne will enhance the effect. Your job is to get her to the deck. Your mother and I will be waiting below. Remember, one of her shoes has to come off. Mess up her hair. An accidental fall into the sea has to look like an accident." I leaned against the balcony railing, trembling. The sea breeze was cold and salty on my face. I clutched the backup phone, recording every single word. "By the way, Liam," Sharon suddenly asked, "what are you going to do about that Chloe girl?" "What's the rush?" Liam laughed. "After this $2 billion is in the bank, we'll move on to the next one. Chloe is a fool. A designer bag is all it takes to make her loyal. She's even easier to trick than Alara." "Don't play with fire," Donovan warned. "Relax, Dad. I know what I'm doing." I stopped the recording and retreated into the room, hiding the phone back in its secret spot. Then I saw it. Liam's spare phone on the nightstand. We knew each other's passcodes. He had insisted on it before the wedding, saying there should be no secrets between a husband and wife. I opened his phone and searched frantically. In his messages, there was a contact named My Baby. The last message, sent that afternoon, read, "Honey, when are you coming back? I miss you." I opened their chat history. It was filled with explicit flirting and intimate photos. The most recent one was of Liam on the yacht, with the bed of our suite in the background. Beyond that, I found a trove of documents in his email, forged power of attorney documents with my signature, Swiss bank account opening forms, and a detailed plan for transferring my assets. I photographed everything with my backup phone and uploaded it to a secure cloud, then set up a scheduled email. If I didn't cancel it within 24 hours, all this evidence would be automatically sent to my father's lawyer, my mother's hospital, and the FBI. After I was done, I placed his phone back where I found it and lay down on the bed. The drowsiness was returning, my consciousness blurring. But I held on tightly to the backup phone hidden under my pillow. Before I finally passed out, I made a decision. I would send these bastards to hell myself. Liam appeared in the room. "Alara, wake up and eat something. I had them make you some seafood chowder." He stood by the bed, his hand on my forehead, his voice so gentle it could melt butter. I opened my eyes and looked at the face I once found so handsome, so dependable. "I'd move mountains for you," he used to say. "Liam, I'm still so dizzy," I murmured, my voice weak and soft. "Just hang in there. We'll dock tomorrow, and I'll take you to a doctor." He helped me sit up and brought the bowl of soup to me. "Open up." I watched him lift a spoonful to my lips. The soup smelled of fresh seafood, but underneath it, I detected a faint, bitter taste. "Why does this taste a little bitter?" I asked deliberately. Liam's expression didn't change. "It's probably just the shrimp heads. They were simmered a long time. It's fine, eat up. It'll taste fishier if it gets cold." I smiled and let him feed me the spoonful. The moment he turned to get a glass of water, I spat the soup into a tissue from the nightstand and hid it under my pillow. "Alara," he said, returning to my side. "There might be a storm later tonight. If you're scared, I'll hold you." "Okay," I nodded. Liam, I want to sleep a little more. Sleep then. I'll stay here with you. He sat on the edge of the bed, playing on his phone. I pretended to drift off, watching his every move from the corner of my eye. He kept looking down at his phone, a smile on his face, texting someone. Around 7 p.m., there was a knock. "Who is it?" Liam asked. "Room service. Your dinner is ready." The voice from outside was a woman's, calm and steady. Liam got up to open the door. I tilted my head slightly and saw a young woman in a yacht staff uniform walk in carrying a tray. She placed the dishes on the table. She was tall, with short hair, and stood ramrod straight. Her movements were too precise, too efficient for a regular service worker. "Just leave it there," Liam said with a wave. The woman nodded and turned to leave. As she passed my bed, her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. Just a flicker, but it was long enough for me to see her expression. It wasn't pity or curiosity, it was something more complex, as if she were confirming something. "Wait," Liam suddenly called out. "What's your name? Are you new?" "Rena. I just started last month," she replied, turning back, her tone respectful but not subservient. "All right, Rena. There's a storm tonight. No need to have anyone on deck duty. Tell the others to stay inside their cabins." "Yes, Mr. Vance." Rena glanced at me one more time, then left. I noticed her walk was steady, each step measured. The service staff on this yacht were all French or Greek. The appearance of a Chinese woman, and one with such bearing, put me on high alert. At 10 p.m., I pretended to take 2 more pills under Liam's watchful eye. He even made me open my mouth to show him I'd swallowed them before he left, satisfied, saying he was going to play cards with his parents. The moment he was gone, I scrambled out of bed, stuck my fingers down my throat, and threw up everything in my stomach. The pills probably hadn't fully dissolved. There was a white powder in the water I brought up. I rinsed my mouth, lay back down, and clutched my backup phone, feigning sleep. At 11 p.m., there was a soft knock on the door. 3 taps, a pause, then 3 more. I sat up, instantly alert, and crept barefoot to the door. "Who is it?" I whispered. "Rena." My heart skipped a beat. After a moment's hesitation, I opened the door a crack. Rena stood outside holding a tray with 2 glasses of water and a small dish of ginger slices. "Miss Yuan, I know you're not asleep," she said, her voice barely a whisper but every word clear. "And I know you've been drugged." I stared at her, silent. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said, holding the tray out to me. "This is ginger powder and caffeine pills. It will help counteract the drug's effects. I'm not one of the Vances. I'm here to investigate them." "Investigate what?" I asked. 5 years ago, my sister Arya was on her honeymoon on this same route. She also fell from a yacht and died. Her eyes shone with a frightening intensity in the dim light. Her husband's last name was Vance. The blood drained from my body. "Liam's cousin?" I blurted out. Rena nodded. 3 generations of the Vance family have been murdering their spouses. They're responsible for at least 7 deaths. It took me 2 years to get a job on this ship. I took a deep breath, opened the door wider, and let her in. Rena locked the door and pulled me into the bathroom. She turned on the shower, the sound of the water masking our conversation. "You heard them?" she asked. "Everything." I took out my backup phone and played the recording for her. Liam's voice was chillingly clear. "Tonight, at 2 a.m., I'll help her up there. 1 push, and it's over." Rena's face turned to stone. "These animals are even more vicious than I thought." "What did you find out about your sister?" I asked, chewing on a slice of ginger. The sharp, spicy taste brought tears to my eyes. 5 years ago, my sister married Liam's cousin, Caleb Vance. It was a honeymoon cruise, just like this. She supposedly slipped and fell in the waters off Greece. They never found her body. Caleb collected on her insurance policy over $10 million and got the house my parents left her. Rena's fists were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Later, I dug into the Vance family's background. Donovan Vance used to be involved in human trafficking back in the day before going legit. His 3 sons, plus a few nephews. Over the years, their wives have either died, gone insane, or disappeared. And they collected insurance money on all of them, I asked, fighting back nausea. Insurance money, dowries, inheritances, property. Whatever they could get their hands on, Rena said. Liam is the sharpest of the bunch. He studied finance and specifically targets only daughters from wealthy families. She looked at me, were their carefully chosen jackpot. $2 billion. And they're making their move tonight. Which means we don't have much time, I said. Rena checked her watch. It's 11:30 now. He's coming for you at 2. We have 90 minutes. There are life rafts at the stern, she said. I scoped them out before I even boarded. Their communication equipment on this yacht has been tampered with. It blocks all outgoing signals. I hid a satellite phone in the engine room, but one of their men found it. So, what's our other option? I asked. We escape first, Rena said, her eyes fixed on mine. You have to be alive to get revenge. I nodded. I went to the closet and stuffed all my clothes into a waterproof bag. From the nightstand drawer, I took the diamond necklace my father gave me, and the bracelet from my mother, securing them on my person. They were mementos, but they were also assets. I wouldn't leave them for those monsters. Then, I picked up Liam's spare phone and scrolled through it one last time. This time, I found a hidden folder. Inside were email exchanges between him and a Swiss bank manager, mentioning an account name and a safe deposit box number. I photographed everything, uploaded it to the cloud, and set up a new timed email scheduled to send in 2 hours. He'll notice his phone has been touched, Rena warned. He won't have time, I said. It would be cold on the sea at night, and the dark color would hide the wetness. I took the backup phone from under the pillow and made sure the recording was still on. Rena watched me, confused. If I don't make it out of this, these recordings will be sent to the FBI automatically, I explained. She nodded, saying nothing more. At midnight, we heard footsteps in the hall. Rena and I held our breath. The steps paused at our door for a few seconds, then moved on. It's the patrol, Rena whispered. They change shifts at this time every night. So, we go now? 10 more minutes. The new shift just left. The stern will be clear. I sat in the darkness, watching the numbers on the digital clock. Each tick felt like it was tearing my heart apart. Just yesterday, my biggest worry was what flowers to choose for my wedding. Now, I was running for my life in the middle of the night. At 12:10, Rena opened the door and peered down the hallway. She waved me over. I followed her, hugging the wall as we moved toward the stern. The ship was silent, except for the sound of the hull cutting through the waves. We passed through the galley, descended 2 sets of steel stairs, and reached the aft deck. The life raft, an inflatable boat with an engine, was mounted on a rack at the stern. It could hold 10 people. Rena moved quickly, untying the securing ropes. I helped her steady the boat, my eyes scanning for any sign of movement from the main cabins. There they are, a man's voice roared from behind us. I spun around. It was Liam's younger brother, Ethan Vance. He was standing on the second-level deck, one hand on the railing, pointing at us. His face was triumphant, like a hunter who had cornered his prey. Quick! Rena pushed the life raft toward the sea with all her might. I rushed to help. The inflatable wasn't massive, but getting it over the rack was a struggle. We pushed with every ounce of strength we had, and finally, it tipped over the side and into the water. A rope was still attached to the yacht. Rena pulled on it, guiding the raft to the boarding gate at the stern. You're not getting away! Ethan charged down from the second level, his footsteps thundering. Rena tied a safety line around my waist, then jumped down first, landing squarely in the raft. Jump! She yelled up at me. I gritted my teeth, climbed over the railing, let go, and dropped. I landed hard in the raft, my right arm slamming against the edge. Pain shot through me, bringing tears to my eyes. Rena was already cutting the main rope with a knife and starting the engine. With a roar, the engine sputtered to life. Get them! Ethan had reached the first deck, followed by 2 male service staff. Just then, another figure appeared on the second deck. It was my mother-in-law, Sharon. She was in her nightgown, screeching, "Stop them! Don't let that bitch get away!" Rena slammed the throttle, and the life raft shot forward. I looked back. Ethan vaulted over the railing and jumped into a smaller boat at the yacht's stern. A speedboat, much faster and more powerful than our raft. "He's coming after us," I yelled to Rena. Rena glanced back, then yanked the wheel hard to the left. The life raft made a sharp turn, kicking up a huge spray of water. I gripped the side, nearly getting thrown out. "Hold on," she shouted, wrenching the wheel again. The raft tilted precariously. I clung to the rope, watching Ethan's speedboat get closer and closer. His face was a mask of rage, his mouth forming curses that were lost in the wind. Sharon was still on the yacht, shrieking orders, her voice high and piercing. "Hold her head under the water. Don't let her escape!" she screamed. Her words ignited a fire in me. I reached into my pocket. Inside was a can of pepper spray my dad had insisted I take. "A girl needs to protect herself when she's out in the world," he had said. Liam had laughed at him for being overprotective. Now, it was my only weapon. Ethan's speedboat was alongside ours. He reached out, trying to grab the edge of our raft, snarling, "You damn bitch! Slow down, I'm getting on. Slow down." "I'll jump over," I yelled to Rena. "Are you crazy? We won't get far if we don't deal with him." Rena hesitated for a second, then eased off the throttle. The life raft slowed. Ethan's boat pulled even closer. He leaned over, his arm outstretched, about to grab me. I used the rocking of the boat to stand up, aimed the pepper spray at his face, and pressed the button. "Arr!" Ethan screamed, clutching his eyes. He stumbled backward, and the speedboat, now uncontrolled, swerved in an arc and crashed into the back of our raft. The massive impact threw me into the sea. Salt water filled my mouth, bitter and choking. I swallowed several mouthfuls, my leg tangled in something. It was a rope from our raft. I grabbed it desperately as Rena leaned over the side, pulling with all her strength. "Grab my hand!" I reached up and took her hand. Her grip was astonishingly strong. She hauled me back into the boat in one motion. Ethan's speedboat was dead in the water, drifting, its engine stalled from the crash. He was rolling around in his boat, screaming in agony, his cries carrying across the water. Rena restarted our engine and sped away from the yacht. "My mother-in-law said she wanted my head held under the water," I said, lying on the floor of the raft, coughing up seawater. I started to laugh. "You sound pretty happy for someone who almost drowned," Rena said, steering the boat. "Not happy," I replied, sitting up, just resigned to my fate. I took off my soaked jacket. A sharp pain shot through my right arm. I looked down and saw a long, deep gash. The skin was peeled back, and blood mixed with seawater was dripping down my arm. Rena glanced back, her brow furrowed. "We need to treat that soon. The seawater is full of bacteria." "Let's just get away first," I said. I looked back at the yacht, a blaze of lights that was shrinking in the darkness, like a golden leaf on the vast sea. My marriage, my trust, I had left it all behind on that boat. Their communication equipment is blocked. "How do we contact the outside world?" I asked. Rena didn't speak. She just pulled something from her pocket. It was an old-fashioned satellite phone. The antenna was broken, and the screen was half shattered. "When they found it, I smashed it," she said. "But the positioning chip inside should still work. Assuming," she added, "we can find a place with a signal and fix it. Can you fix it?" "If I have the tools. A screwdriver, a soldering iron, a stable power source." I gave a bitter laugh. Where were we going to find those things out here? "A storm's coming. We need to find land first." I looked at the black, churning sky. The moon was hidden by clouds, and the sea was beginning to heave restlessly. The wind was picking up from the northeast, each gust stronger than the last. The life raft's fuel gauge showed about a third of a tank left. 40 nautical miles, max," Rena said. "What's 40 nautical miles from here?" She thought for a moment. "According to the charts, there's a group of uninhabited islands southeast of our position. If we're lucky, we can make it. And if we're not, Then we drift until they send a helicopter to find us. They have a helicopter? I was shocked. Not on the yacht. But the Vance family has connections in the Bahamas. Rena's face darkened. This yacht's home port is in Miami, but Donovan Vance is chummy with some powerful people in Nassau. Once they realize we've escaped, they'll definitely notify their people on shore. I said nothing, just stared out at the dark water. The raft tossed on the waves. I held on tight with one hand, the other clutching the waterproof bag with my backup phone inside. As long as I was alive, I would make those people pay. The wind grew stronger. The waves swelled from 6 feet to 10, then 12. The raft was like a leaf, tossed about violently. Rena cut the engine and threw out the sea anchor to try and stabilize us. "We might not make it to the island," Rena said. "This is worse than the forecast." A bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. The rain came down in sheets, lashing my face like a whip. I couldn't open my eyes, clinging instinctively to the ropes on the side of the raft. The boat bucked wildly, each drop feeling like it would plunge us to the bottom of the sea. "Get down low! Grab the crossbar in the middle!" Rena's voice cut through the storm, a lifeline pulling me back from panic. I did as she said, sprawling on the floor of the raft, my arms wrapped around the inflatable crossbar. Cold seawater flooded the boat, rising past my calves. The salt water seared the wound on my arm, and I broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. "The engine's useless in these waves," Rena yelled, lying down beside me, also gripping the bar. "What do we do?" I shouted back. "Wait for the storm to pass. These things come on fast, but they leave fast too." I nodded, but I knew we might not last that long. A monster wave crashed over us, nearly flipping the raft. I felt myself lifted by a tremendous force, then slammed back down. My left shoulder hit a metal support bracket on a seat, and a blinding pain shot through me. Rena reached out and grabbed the collar of my life vest, dragging me back toward the crossbar. "Don't let go! 10 more minutes!" No sooner had she spoken than another wave washed over us. This time, I got a mouthful of seawater and coughed until I thought my lungs would burst. My ears were filled with a roaring sound. I couldn't tell if it was the waves or the thunder. My father's face flashed in my mind. If that scheduled email never sent, if my parents also died in that accident in Paris, then my entire life would have been nothing but a scam. No, I gritted my teeth, pressing my body hard against the crossbar. I will not die here. I don't know how much time passed, but the storm finally began to subside. The rain lessened, and the sea's fury calmed to a steady swell. I was soaked to the bone, shivering uncontrollably, my teeth chattering. Rena was in better shape. She got up, checked the engine, tinkered with it for a few moments, and managed to restart it. The engine sputtered like it was coughing, but it was running. "We're almost out of fuel," she said, looking at the gauge. 20 nautical miles, maybe. "Will we find an island?" "We should reach one by dawn." She looked up at the sky. "I've studied this area. There's a chain of islands to the southeast. The closest one is Andros, but that's a tourist spot, full of people. The farther ones are uninhabited." "Let's go to the tourist island," I said. "We can get help there." Rena shook her head. "We can't. The Vances have too many connections in the Bahamas. The moment we show up, they'll know. Until we get this evidence safely to the authorities, we need to stay disappeared." I understood. Liam already knew I had escaped with the evidence. He would be desperately searching for us, maybe even preemptively reporting me as lost at sea. If I suddenly appeared in a crowd, his people would find me first. "To the uninhabited island, then," I said. Rena nodded. The sky began to lighten. After the storm, the sea was a calm, iron gray. I sat in the raft, shivering, my arm throbbing. The wound was now pale, and the surrounding skin was red and swollen. "Rena," I called out, "is my arm going to be useless?" She looked back, her brow furrowed. "It's a deep cut. It needs stitches. When we get to the island, I'll find a way to sew it up for you." "You know how to do that?" "Learned battlefield first aid in the service." "You were really in the Special Forces?" She gave a small, faint smile. "U.S. Navy SEALs." After I was discharged, I got my mariner's license and worked my way onto this yacht. I nodded, a sense of security settling over me. The life raft chugged forward. As the sky grew brighter, I looked back the way we came. The sea was endless. The yacht was long gone. I wondered what Liam's face looked like when he discovered I had escaped. Donovan and Sharon must have been furious. Their perfect plan had failed. Now they would be scrambling to cover their tracks. "Land!" Rena suddenly shouted. I turned my head. On the horizon, a patch of dark green emerged from the sea. It was the silhouette of an island, floating alone against the brightening sky. My eyes welled up with tears. We made it. We were alive. The life raft was practically falling apart by the time it reached the shore. Rena jumped out first, tying the painter to the trunk of a fallen palm tree. I tried to stand, but my legs were too weak. Rena came back and helped me out of the boat. The moment my feet touched the sand, my knees buckled, and I almost collapsed. "We need to get off the beach," Rena said. "They might search by helicopter." I looked up at the sky. There was no sound of a helicopter now, but the Vances would surely find a way to search the area. "Into the woods," I said, gritting my teeth and forcing myself to stand. We followed the beach inland, through a patch of low scrub, and over a pile of rocks. My energy was gone. Rena was practically dragging me. "There's a cave ahead," Rena pointed to a rocky recess. It was a shallow cave, its entrance hidden by weeds and vines. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't looking. We crawled inside. It was about 10 feet deep, dry, with some dead leaves and branches on the floor. Rena helped me sit down, then went out to gather more dry wood. She used a lighter to start a small fire. "Take off your clothes and dry them," she said. I hesitated, then slowly removed my soaked jacket and pants. My underclothes were wet too, but I felt awkward in front of her. She glanced at me, then took off her own jacket and handed it to me. "Wear this for now. What about you?" "I'm tough," she said, sitting by the fire. She took a small tool pouch from her belt. Inside were several needles, a roll of medical thread, and a small bottle of antiseptic. "You're really going to stitch me up?" I asked, eyeing the curved needle with dread. "It'll get infected if I don't." She sterilized the needle in the fire, wiped it with antiseptic, then knelt beside me. "This is going to hurt." I bit down on the sleeve of my borrowed jacket and nodded. The needle pierced my skin, and the world went black for a second. I bit down harder, tears streaming down my face. Rena's hand was steady, stitching me up one careful pull at a time, like she was mending a worn-out doll. "You're stronger than my sister," Rena said as she worked. She went to her death without ever knowing what she'd married into. I let go of the sleeve, gasping for breath. "How did you know your sister was murdered?" "Before she got married, Arya sent me a message. She said Caleb was taking her sailing a lot, and that something felt off. I told her to be careful." She never replied. 3 days later, I got the call that she'd fallen overboard. Her voice was calm, but each word seemed forced through clenched teeth. "What happened to Caleb Vance? He moved to Canada. Used my sister's insurance money to buy 2 houses and open a restaurant." Rena snipped the thread and patted my arm. "There. Get it looked at properly at a hospital when we get back to the States." I looked at the neat row of stitches on my arm, and my nose stung. "Rena, thank you. Don't thank me. You being alive is the best thanks I could ask for." She stood up and walked to the mouth of the cave, looking at the sky. "Get some rest. This afternoon, I'll scout the island, see if I can find fresh water." I leaned against the cave wall and closed my eyes. My body felt like it was falling apart. Every bone ached. But the pain in my heart was deeper, blacker. "Liam Vance," I swore to myself. "As long as I have a breath left in my body, I will make you pay in blood." I slept for a couple of hours, woken by a throbbing pain. My arm was on fire, and my whole body was burning up. Rena came over and felt my forehead. Her expression changed. "You have a fever." I licked my cracked lips, my throat raw. "Water?" Rena shook her head. "There's no fresh water." I looked everywhere. There are a few coconut trees, but they're too high to climb, and the low ones are all dried up. I was breathing heavily, feeling like I was being roasted over a fire. The infection was causing a raging fever, and I didn't even have the strength to sit up. I have to go find water, Rena said. And something for the fever. Stay here. I'll leave the fire for you. She covered the cave entrance with branches and vines, gave me a few more instructions, and left. I lay there, delirious, a cold sweat on my forehead. Images swirled in my mind. Liam's smiling face on the deck, the photo of him with Chloe, Sharon's twisted face as she screamed for them to hold my head under the water. You can't die, I told myself over and over. You can't die here. After what felt like an eternity, Rena returned. She carried a few green coconuts and a handful of herbs. This island has wild beach vitex, she said. It can reduce fever and inflammation. She crushed the herbs on a rock and applied the paste to my wound, then cracked open a coconut and poured the water into my mouth. The coconut water was warm and slightly sweet. I drank greedily. After a few sips, my throat felt better. There's a small mountain in the island's interior, Rena said. Cliffs to the north, forest to the south. I found an abandoned road covered in vines. Looks like it was left over from the Cold War. An abandoned road? Yeah, concrete. I followed it north and found a small concrete building hidden by bushes. Looked like a bunker. The door was rusted shut. The markings on it were American. I pushed myself up. American? There were Americans on this island? During the Cold War, the U.S. had surveillance stations all over the Caribbean to track Soviet submarines, Rena explained. This island is in a strategic spot. It's not surprising. My mind raced. If there's radio equipment there, we can call for help. Rena's eyes lit up. That's what I was thinking, but I can't get the door open alone. I need your help. I tried to stand. My legs were still weak, but they were better than before. Rena handed me a branch to use as a walking stick. I leaned on it and followed her out of the cave. The island sun was blinding. The wind was calmer than last night, and the sound of waves on the beach was a distant murmur. We passed through the bushes, into a sparse forest, and up a gentle slope. There it is, Rena said, pointing. I looked where she was pointing. Through a thick curtain of vines, I could see a low, gray concrete building, like a bunker. The door was a single sheet of rusted metal. Next to it, on a concrete slab, were a few faded letters. I got closer. I could make out U.S., Navy, and some numbers. It's a Navy listening post, Rena said. My grandfather served in the Navy. I recognized the insignia. Can we open the door? I asked. Rena went to the door and pushed. It didn't budge. It was rusted shut. I looked around and found a thick iron bar on the ground, probably an old tool. I picked it up, jammed the flat end into the crack of the door, and pried with all my might. Rena came to help. We both put our weight into it. With a screech of protesting metal, the door finally gave way. A gust of stale air, thick with dust and rust, billowed out. We forced the door open about 2 feet and squeezed inside. It was dark, with only a sliver of light from the doorway. Rena turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. It was a small room, about 200 square feet. Along one wall, wooden crates sat on metal shelves. In a corner were 2 army cots, rotted down to their metal frames. The floor was littered with old cans and bottles. Look, Rena's flashlight beam settled on the far end of the room. There was a metal table with a square piece of equipment on it, covered by a tarp. Rena walked over and carefully lifted the tarp. Underneath was a hand-cranked radio transmitter. Next to it were several rusted battery packs. Will it still work? My voice trembled. Rena examined it carefully. The main unit isn't damaged. But this isn't enough. What else do we need? An antenna. She looked around. A transmitter is useless without an antenna. I went to the wall and saw a roll of something wrapped in oilcloth. I opened it. It was a collapsible antenna. It was a little rusty, but structurally intact. Will this work? Rena took it, her eyes shining. Yes, this is a military-grade collapsible antenna, high quality. I felt a surge of new energy. The pain in my arm forgotten. What's next? We move the equipment outside, charge the batteries in the sun, set up the antenna, and find a frequency. She patted the dust off the machine. This is old military radio. The frequency range is limited, but we should be able to transmit on a civilian distress frequency. I'll need some time to tune it. Will they search for us with a helicopter? I asked, worried. Rena thought for a moment. The Vances won't dare to conduct a public search. They'd prefer it if we were dead. If we're alive, they're terrified of the evidence we have getting out. So they'll probably use their private connections, hire private investigators or underworld figures to look for us. That will still be fast, I said. So we have to be faster, Rena replied, patting the transmitter. Come on, help me move this. I never thought I would one day be on a deserted island, hauling a Cold War-era radio. The machine was heavier than it looked. It took all our strength to get it out of the bunker and into a sunny spot. Rena used her tools to open the transmitter's casing, cleaned the dust from the internal components, and oiled the bearings. She worked with the practiced ease of a master technician. You learned this in the military? Our instructor taught a course on wilderness survival. One of the lessons was emergency communications. She smiled. I thought I'd never use it. Guess I was wrong. I looked at her. Rena, if we get out of this alive, I swear I'll help you get justice for your sister. We'll bring the whole Vance family down. She looked up at me, her gaze serious. We save each other. I nodded. The sun was scorching. We placed the battery packs in direct sunlight and set up a makeshift stand for the antenna. Rena began to tune the transmitter, turning the knob slowly. I've got something, she said suddenly. I leaned in and heard a faint static crackle from the transmitter, intermittent, like a voice from another world. Keep tuning. My heart was pounding. Rena turned the knob millimeter by millimeter. The static grew louder, then softer, until finally, on one frequency, we heard a garbled voice. It was Italian. It's an Italian freighter, Rena whispered, as if afraid to spook the fragile signal. She tuned the transmitter to that frequency, cleared her throat, and began calling for help in fluent English. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is a civilian emergency channel. We are on an uninhabited island, south of the Andros Island group. Our vessel sank in a storm. There is an injured person requiring immediate medical attention. Repeat, requiring immediate medical attention. The signal went out, intermittent and scratchy. There was silence for a few seconds. Then, a reply came back in heavily accented English. Received distress call. Please report your position and number of persons. Rena gave our approximate coordinates and repeated the information. The voice replied, Signal received. We are contacting the U.S. Coast Guard. A rescue helicopter is estimated to arrive within 90 minutes. Please maintain an open channel. Hearing those words, my eyes instantly filled with tears. We were saved. We had made it. My voice was choked with emotion. Rena let out a long breath, the tension finally leaving her face. She held out her hand to me. I gripped it tightly. Two women, covered in wounds, stood under the sun on a deserted island and laughed. For the next 90 minutes, we sat by the radio, keeping the channel open. Rena occasionally sent back a confirmation signal. I leaned against a tree stump, letting the sun dry the last of the seawater from my clothes. 90 minutes, I murmured. That's fast. Don't relax yet, Rena warned. If the Vances are monitoring this frequency, they might guess it's us. My heart clenched. She was right. The yacht's communications were blocked, but the Vance network might be able to monitor civilian distress channels. Get your weapon ready, Rena said, pulling a folding knife from her pouch and handing it to me. I took the knife and held it tight. It wasn't big, but the blade was sharp. Do you know how to use it? She asked. If someone tries to kill me, I will. Rena glanced at me, but said nothing. Time crawled by. Every gust of wind, every bird call, put us on edge. The radio occasionally crackled with conversations in Italian and English between the freighter and the Coast Guard, confirming the rescue arrangements. 75 minutes later, we heard the sound of a helicopter. I looked up. A red and white rescue helicopter was approaching from the northeast. It had the U.S. Coast Guard insignia on its side. "They're here!" I stood up. Rena stood too, waving frantically at the sky. The helicopter hovered above us, the powerful downdraft whipping the leaves around us. The cabin door opened, and a rescuer was lowered down. He checked our injuries and radioed his status to the crew above. "Who is the injured party?" he asked. "She has a laceration on her arm. It's been sutured but is infected, and she has a fever," Rena said, pointing at me. The rescuer asked a few more questions, then lowered a stretcher. I was secured and slowly hoisted up. As I was pulled into the helicopter, I looked back one last time at the island, the cave, the bunker, the radio transmitter, the battered life raft. This island had saved us. On the helicopter, a medic gave me a shot of antibiotics and redressed my wound. Rena sat beside me, still clutching the antenna from the radio. I didn't see when she had dismantled the key parts. "You're taking that with you?" I whispered. "A souvenir." She smiled. The helicopter flew for about an hour and a half, landing on the rooftop helipad of a hospital in Fort Lauderdale. I was wheeled into the emergency room for a series of tests. The doctor said I was lucky. The wound was infected, but it hadn't turned into sepsis. One more day, and it would have been critical. The next day, I used a phone from the nurse's station and dialed my father's number. "Hello?" My father's voice was weary, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Dad, it's me." There was silence on the other end for several seconds, then a thud, as if the phone had been dropped. Then I heard my mother's crying. "Ilara? Is that you, Ilara? Where are you? Liam said you fell into the sea. I've been going out of my mind." My nose stung, and tears streamed down my face. "Mom, I'm not dead. I was rescued. I'm in a hospital in Florida right now. You need to come and bring Mr. Adler." My father finally picked up the phone, his voice shaking. "Ilara, Dad's here. Don't be afraid. We're coming right now. Are you okay?" "Where is that bastard Liam?" "Dad, I can't say much over the phone. Just come. And whatever you do, don't go to Paris. Don't go anywhere. Stay somewhere safe and wait for my call." "Okay. Dad will listen. I'll have your uncle's security team protect you. Don't you go anywhere. Wait for Dad." After hanging up, I felt completely drained. Rena sat in the chair beside me, munching on a cracker the nurse had given her. "Is your dad reliable?" she asked. "He loves me more than anything," I smiled. "Good," she said, taking a sip of water, "because the real battle is just beginning." I looked out the window. The sky over Florida was a brilliant blue, the sun shining on the white hospital windowsill. But I knew that behind this light, the Vance's dark web was spreading. They thought I was dead. Now, it was my turn to direct the show. The next evening, my parents flew in from Connecticut. The moment my mom entered the hospital room, she hugged me and sobbed. My dad stood beside her, his eyes red, his hands trembling. "You silly girl, you scared your mother to death," she cried, patting my back. "Mom, I'm fine, see?" I said, trying to smile. But my own tears wouldn't stop. Mr. Adler, our family's legal counsel for 20 years, was with them. He was in his 50s, calm and astute. "Mr. Adler," I said. "Ilara," he nodded, sitting down across from me. I told them everything, from the motion sickness pills to the conversation on the deck, the recordings, the photos from Liam's phone, Rena's help, and our survival on the island. As he listened, Mr. Adler's face grew grim. "The Vance family are professional criminals," he said. "We have to attack them on both criminal and civil fronts. I have the audio recordings, photos, and the files from his email on my backup phone. They're all uploaded to the cloud," I said. "And Rena's sister was also a victim." Rena nodded and briefly recounted her story. Mr. Adler's brow furrowed deeper with every word. "I need to get my hands on that evidence and contact the FBI and Interpol immediately," he said. "Also, we cannot let Liam Vance know you're alive. This gives us a huge advantage." "Why?" my mother asked, still crying. "Because Liam thinks Ilara is dead," Mr. Adler explained. He'll be accelerating the inheritance process, maybe even tying up loose ends. We can use the evidence to nail him when he's completely unprepared. What should I do? I asked. You have two choices, mister, Adler said, holding up two fingers. First, we report this to the police immediately, involving the Florida authorities and the FBI, but the Vances might get tipped off and flee. Second, we keep your survival a secret for now. Let Liam think you're dead while we lay a trap in the shadows and wait for him to expose himself. I thought for a moment. The second option. But you'll have to disappear for a while, mister, Adler said. No public appearances, no using your real identity. I'll arrange a legal fake identity for you. In the meantime, you'll stay in a secure location until we're ready to close the net. I nodded. What about the company? My father asked. With Alara out of sight? We tell the media and the shareholders that she suffered a severe injury and is in a coma, Mr. Adler said. The more tragic, the better. Let Liam think his plan was a complete success. That's a good idea, Rena chimed in. The more arrogant he gets, the more mistakes he'll make. 5 days later, the authorities officially released a report. A American citizen had gone missing at sea in the Caribbean. After an unsuccessful search, she was listed as a missing person. The report didn't name me, but the media smelled a story. Liam, as expected, took the bait. He posted a long, tearful tribute online, describing his beloved wife's tragic accident and even offered $1 million reward for any information. Then, he registered the Alara Vance Charitable Foundation in Switzerland, announcing his intention to donate his wife's entire inheritance. The nerve of him, I said, throwing the tablet onto the sofa. I was hiding out in a discreet apartment in a suburb of Zurich, under the alias Jessica Chen, a wealthy woman from the U.S., seeking dermatological treatment in Switzerland. The apartment, arranged by Mr. Adler through a Swiss partner, had tight security. He's moving faster than I thought, Rena said, looking at the list of evidence I had compiled. It hasn't even been a month since you disappeared. And he's already touching your money. What about the trust fund? I asked. Your father has already notified the trustees to freeze all activity, Mr. Adler said over the phone. But Liam has hired Swiss lawyers, claiming that because you are dead or missing, he, as your spouse, has the right to inherit. The trustees are in a difficult position, but they won't release the funds without an official declaration of death. Then let him sue, I said. The more court appearances, the more headlines, the better. Are you ready? Mr. Adler asked. What's the plan for Switzerland? I took a deep breath. I'm ready. First, we get what's in that safe deposit box. Rena and I arrived at the bank in Zurich. She wore a tailored suit and heels, her makeup expertly applied. She was unrecognizable from the woman on the island. The bank manager was waiting in the VIP lounge and rose graciously as we entered. Miss Yuan, he said, producing a document. This is the safe deposit box number indicated in your grandfather's estate documents. Please sign to confirm. I signed, and the manager led us through a series of security doors, stopping before a wall of gleaming safe deposit boxes. This is it. He inserted a key, and I entered the passcode. The lock clicked open. I pulled open the box. Inside was a thick stack of documents, several passports, and a few items in sealed plastic bags. Rena picked up the top bag, and her face went pale. Inside the bag was a lock of a woman's hair. Every bag had a label. The first, area, the 14th of June, 2019. The second, Mei Wang, the 2nd of March, 2017. The third, Sophia Lee, the 19th of August, 2014. I counted them. There were 7 in total. 7 women, 7 locks of hair, 7 lives. The Vance family collected trophies like heirlooms. I stared at the bags, my nails digging into my palms. Rena found the bag with Arya written on it. Her hand was shaking, her breathing so heavy it seemed she was trying to suck all the air out of the room. It's hers, she said, her voice hoarse. I recognized this hair tie. Besides the hair, the bag contained a dark green scrunchie with a small pearl charm. It was faded and clearly worn for a long time. Rena, I said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. She closed her eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath. When she opened them again, her gaze was cold as ice. "Photograph it," she said. "Photograph everything." I nodded and took out my backup phone, documenting the contents of the box piece by piece, ensuring every detail was clear. After I finished, I checked the bottom of the box and found a false bottom. I pried it open. Inside was a black-covered ledger. I opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten entries: date, location, target, amount, method, and the person responsible. Every transaction was meticulously recorded. This wasn't just a collection of trophies. It was the accounting book for an entire murder-for-profit enterprise. "Donovan Vance's handwriting," Rena said, leaning in. I saw him writing on the yacht. I flipped to the last few pages. My heart stopped. "Elara Yuan, August 2026, Caribbean Yacht. Accidental drowning, trust fund, $2 billion. Handled by Liam, Donovan, Sharon." My name was written right there, their plan, recorded. I had become the latest entry in their book of murder. "Bastards," I hissed. Besides the ledger, the compartment also contained several bank cards, a USB drive, and a stack of documents in different languages. Mr. Adler later confirmed they were records of bribes the Vance family had paid to public officials in multiple countries. "This is enough," I said to Rena. "This is enough to send them to hell." She nodded. We placed everything back as it was, having photographed the ledger and the bags of hair. We left the bank. The car ride was long and silent. "What's the next step?" Rena asked. "We wait for the right moment." I looked out the window at the bustling streets of Zurich. "We wait until they are at their most triumphant." The moment came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, Liam Vance held a global press conference at the President Wilson Hotel in Geneva. The invitation was titled in bold letters, "Truth and Justice." "He's going to play the victim," Mr. Adler said, forwarding me the news link. I clicked on the video. Liam, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, stood at the podium. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair slightly disheveled, as if he hadn't slept in days. Behind him stood Donovan and Sharon, both looking grief-stricken. "Members of the media, thank you for coming today," Liam began, his voice low and sincere. "My wife, Elara Yuan, was tragically lost at sea during our honeymoon. Her fate is still unknown. As her husband, I am devastated, but some people are spreading vicious rumors online, accusing me of murdering my wife. This is the greatest insult to my character." He grew more emotional as he spoke, tears streaming down his face. "I established the Elara Foundation so her spirit would know that my love for her is real." The flashes from the cameras were blinding. "He's a good actor," Rena said with a cold smile. I stared at Liam's tear-streaked face on the screen and suddenly laughed. Trying to reason with scum like him was pointless. He could cry like a saint in front of the world's cameras and, on the same night, laugh about pushing his wife into the sea. "Mr. Adler, can our people get into the conference?" I dialed his number. "Already arranged," Mr. Adler said. "Erin Schmidt, a reporter from the Swiss Financial Observer. She has a copy of the files. Interpol is also ready. They'll move as soon as you're on site." Good. I hung up and changed into a black sheath dress I had bought for this occasion, pinning a small white rose to the lapel. I had Rena do my makeup, elegant but severe, and pulled my hair back into a sleek bun. I looked at the woman in the mirror. The naive, soft-hearted Elara Yuan was dead. The woman staring back at me had come to collect a debt. "Let's go," I said. A VIP passage in the hotel's underground parking garage led directly to the backstage area, prearranged by Mr. Adler. Wearing sunglasses and a mask, I bypassed the cameras and made my way to a corner in the back row of the conference hall. The room was packed, media from all over the world, socialites, and people live-streaming on their phones. All eyes were on the man on stage, performing his grief. "I swear I will find Elara," Liam was saying, "dead or alive. I am standing here today to prove to the world that I, Liam Vance, am an innocent husband." A sparse round of applause followed. Just then, the large screen behind him, which had been playing a loop of the charity's promotional video, suddenly went black. Then, a sickening audio recording began to play. "Just bear it a little longer, Mom. After tonight, the show is over. A storm rolling in after midnight. At 2 a.m. I'll help her up there. One push, and it's over. $2 billion. Every last cent. Should be in our account within 3 months." Liam whipped his head around, his face instantly draining of color. The audience was stunned for a moment, then the room erupted. Reporters surged forward, a frantic mass of cameras, phones, and microphones all aimed at Liam. Donovan leaped from his seat and charged toward the backstage entrance, pounding on the control room door, yelling, "Turn it off! Turn it off now!" Sharon stood on stage, screeching, "It's fake! It's been doctored." But no one was listening. The recording continued, Liam's family's voices echoing through the hall. "Hold her head under the water. Don't let her escape. Is the champagne for tonight ready? That champagne will enhance the effect." The reporters' faces were a mixture of shock and disbelief. Some started broadcasting live, others narrating directly into their cameras. "We are live at the President Wilson Hotel in Geneva, where we have just heard what appears to be a recording of Liam Vance and his parents plotting the murder of Alara Yuan." Liam lunged at the podium, frantically smashing at the laptop and cables, trying to kill the power to the screen. But the image on the screen changed. It became a giant slide. It was a photo from inside the safe deposit box. 7 clear plastic bags, lined up in a row. Each bag contained a lock of a woman's hair. Next to them were the labels: Arya, Mei Wang, Sophia Li, Ava Chen. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Then, more photos appeared, yellowed documents. The Vance family's offshore bribery records, bank accounts, amounts, recipients, all laid bare. And then, the intimate photos of Liam with Chloe, and the plan he had sent to Donovan. "Oh my God," a female reporter in the front row whispered, covering her mouth. Liam's body was trembling violently. He stumbled backward, as if looking for a hole to disappear into. Donovan and Sharon were restrained by security, struggling desperately. Just as the room was stunned into silence, a clear, cold voice cut through the air from the back of the hall. "Liam Vance." Every head turned. The floodlights swiveled, blindingly, toward the source of the voice. I stood there. I took off my sunglasses and mask, and under the gaze of hundreds of eyes, I began to walk, step by step, toward the stage. My heels were silent on the thick carpet, but with each step, the room grew quieter. By the time I stopped, only Liam's ragged breathing could be heard. "Look at me," I said, stopping 10 feet away from him, locking my eyes on his. "I'm alive. You look surprised." Liam's pupils contracted, as if he had seen a ghost. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His lips trembled, his legs buckled, and he had to grip the podium to keep from collapsing. I turned to the audience, my voice steady and clear, reaching every corner of the room. "My name is Alara Yuan. I am the loving, newlywed wife this man just spoke of. 7 days ago, I personally heard him and his parents celebrating on the deck of a yacht, toasting to their plan to push me into the sea tonight. The motion sickness I was suffering from was because he was drugging my water and my soup every single day." The room was silent for a beat, then the flashbulbs went off in a frenzy. I escaped. I survived a storm at sea and drifted to a deserted island. I sent a distress signal using a radio left over from the Cold War. I scanned the crowd. If I hadn't survived, what you all would have seen today was a perfect accident. I held up a USB drive. On this drive is every recording, every page of the ledger, every photo, every piece of evidence. I have already submitted it to Interpol and the Swiss Federal Prosecutor's Office. I turned back to Liam. "You said you wanted to prove you were an innocent husband. I'm giving you that chance now." I smiled. He cried, crawling forward. "I was wrong. I was possessed. Give me a chance." "Did you give Arya a chance? Did you give Mei Wang a chance? Did you give any of the 7 women lying at the bottom of the ocean a chance?" I said, each word like a chip of ice. I didn't kill them. It was my dad. He was cut off by a man who rushed the stage. But before he could get near me, Rena intercepted him from the side with a swift kick that sent him sprawling. In an instant, several plainclothes officers were on him, pinning him to the ground. "Don't move," one of them yelled, flashing a badge. They were from Interpol. The hall descended into chaos as more officers poured in from every entrance, sealing off all exits. Donovan and Sharon were forced back into their seats, their wrists now in cold steel cuffs. "Let me through! I have to testify," a young woman's voice cried from the crowd. Everyone turned to look. A girl in a white dress pushed her way to the front, holding up a phone. She was pretty but pale, her hair a mess, as if she had summoned every ounce of courage she possessed. "I'm Chloe!" she shouted, her voice echoing in the hall. "I have evidence that Liam Vance drugged me." Liam looked up, his expression shifting from terror to horror, and then to a twisted rage. Chloe walked to the front and handed her phone to an officer. The officer watched it, his brow furrowed. It was a video. The frame showed a drink, and a hand entered from off-screen, pouring a white powder into the glass. On the wrist of that hand was a watch. A sharp-eyed reporter shouted, "That's Liam's watch. It's the Patek Philippe he was wearing on the yacht." Chloe turned, her eyes filled with tears, and looked at me. "Miss Yuan, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was married. He told me you were in a contentious divorce, that it was an arranged marriage with no love. He drugged me and took videos to blackmail me. I know I'm not the only one." I looked at her, a complex mix of emotions welling up inside me. This girl was 7 years younger than me, only 22, still in college. She was another one of Liam's prey, one who had narrowly avoided becoming the next lock of hair in a plastic bag. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said, nodding to her. "The fact that you stood up is incredibly brave." Chloe broke down, sobbing. Just then, Donovan, who was being held on the floor, suddenly roared, "You useless bastard! You ruined everything!" Sharon was also wailing, "My son is innocent. That bitch framed us." Rena moved to my side, her cold gaze sweeping over them. I noticed her fist was clenched, her eyes fixed on someone in the crowd, a middle-aged man in a gray suit, trying to slip out a side door. "Caleb Vance," Rena muttered. I knew immediately. Liam's cousin, her sister's husband. I followed her gaze. The man was hurrying toward the emergency exit, his head down. He was slightly overweight, his face etched with panic. "Stop that man in the gray suit!" I yelled. 2 officers reacted instantly, blocking the side door. Caleb ran right into them, tried to turn and run, but Rena was already on him. She grabbed the back of his collar and threw him to the ground. "Police! He's assaulting me!" Caleb screamed. Rena knelt on his back and looked down at him. "Caleb Vance! Do you remember Aria?" Caleb's face was pressed into the carpet, his eyes darting in panic. "Who?" "I don't know you." "I'm Aria's sister." Rena pulled the photo we had found from her pocket, the picture of Aria with the dark green scrunchie. "I've been looking for you for 5 years. Every time I saw you living it up overseas on my sister's money, I wanted to kill you with my own hands." Several officers came over and cuffed Caleb as well. The entire conference hall had become a crime scene. The media was held back behind a yellow line, but their cameras never stopped filming. The live global broadcast had transformed from Liam Vance's charity press conference into the public unveiling of the Vance family's crimes. I stood at the podium. Behind me, the image of the safe deposit box remained on the giant screen, the 7 bags of hair lying side by side, like 7 unmarked graves. "I now declare," I said, looking directly into the cameras, "that I have officially submitted all evidence to Interpol. The Vance family is suspected of multiple counts of murder, fraud, money laundering, and bribery. I, Ilara Yuan, will spend every second of the rest of my life fighting for justice for the women they murdered." The room erupted in thunderous applause. Liam was being dragged away by 2 officers, his body limp as if his bones had been removed. He looked at me, his lips trembling, as if he wanted to say something more. But I had already turned my back on him. "Ilara," Alara, I loved you, he screamed desperately behind me. I didn't stop walking. 3 days after the press conference, the story reached its peak. Global media was ablaze with the case. From China to Europe, North America to Australia, nearly every news platform was broadcasting the audio from the screen, and the moment I took off my sunglasses in the hall. Honeymoon yacht murder plot. The secret of the 7 locks of hair. The $2 billion inheritance, and the web of death headlines were everywhere. The photo of Liam kneeling on the floor was on every front page. More of Donovan Vance's past crimes were uncovered. Associates from his human trafficking days 30 years ago were tracked down and arrested one by one. Sharon was charged as a co-conspirator and planner in multiple murders, with evidence including her bank transfers, call logs, and international travel records. Caleb Vance was extradited to the United States to face a reopened investigation into Aria's death, and Canadian authorities began proceedings to seize his assets. Alara, a reporter wants to interview you, Mr. Adler said, walking over with his phone. Not right now. I was leaning against the window of my hotel room, watching the swans on Lake Zurich. I have something else to do. What? See Rena. Rena was in another room in the hotel. When I knocked and entered, she was standing by the window, holding the dark green scrunchie. 2 packed suitcases sat by the bed. You're leaving? I asked. My part in this is mostly done. I want to go back to the States for a bit, she said, turning around. Her face had a rare softness to it. To pay my respects to my sister. I haven't had a proper farewell for her since she died. I walked over and gave her a hug. I'll go with you. A few days later, Rena and I took a private jet back to Connecticut. Aria was buried in a quiet cemetery in the suburbs, surrounded by a grove of osmanthus trees. It was the season they were in bloom, and the air was filled with a sweet fragrance. Rena knelt and gently placed the scrunchie in front of the headstone, then lit a bundle of incense. She didn't speak, just knelt there for a long, long time. I stood beside her, holding a bouquet of white roses. Sis, I found him, Rena finally said, her voice a little hoarse. He's been caught. I'll get your money back, piece by piece. You can rest easy now. A gentle breeze blew, and a few osmanthus blossoms fell onto the headstone. I stepped forward, placed the white roses before the grave, and bowed deeply. Aria, I said. I never knew you, but I promised your sister I would make those people pay. I've kept my promise. From now on, I'll use all my strength to protect more women like you. That night, back in my old bed at home, I had the most peaceful sleep in months. In the following months, the Vance family's cases entered the long and complex legal process. Liam was held in a Swiss detention center awaiting extradition. His legal team kept trying to find ways to lessen his sentence, claiming he was coerced by his father, but the audio recordings proved everything. One day in December, Aaron Schmidt sent me an email. Liam Vance had hanged himself in his solitary cell with a bedsheet. I stared at the email for a long time. I couldn't say if I felt happy or something else entirely. This man had stolen a part of my life, and had nearly stolen my life itself. But now he was dead, and I felt no sense of release. I knew Liam was just the knife. The hand holding the knife, the larger, cross-national criminal network, was still out there. What do the authorities say? I asked Mr. Adler over the phone. The Swiss prison administration reported that he used a blind spot in the surveillance and the gap between nightly patrols to hang himself, Mr. Adler said, his tone laced with a certain ambiguity. But the position, let's just say it doesn't look like something a person could accomplish alone. I understood what he meant. He had been silenced. Liam knew too much, Mr. Adler said. He was likely eliminated to prevent him from exposing his superiors. I hung up and walked to the window. A light rain was falling outside, the sky a dull gray. Rena, it's not over, I said into the phone. I know, she replied, her voice steady. As long as that network exists, there will be another Liam Vance, another Ilara Yuan. My father was waiting for me in his study. Have you thought about the foundation? He asked. I have. I sat across from him and pushed a proposal across the desk. I want to establish a foundation to protect women in their marriages. to provide legal, safety, and psychological support to women who are victims of marital fraud and domestic violence. My father read a few pages and nodded. Money isn't the issue. But are you sure you want to do this? It will be incredibly difficult. You'll make a lot of enemies. Dad, I said, looking at him, if I hadn't survived, that $2 billion would be in Liam's hands. What would my life have meant then? What would the lives of all those dead women have meant? Money has to be used for what matters. My father was silent for a moment, then sighed. You've grown up. After suffering such a huge loss, you've learned a hard lesson. I smiled. The following spring, the White Rose Foundation was officially launched with an initial endowment of $500 million. I served as the chairwoman. I invited Rena to be the foundation's head of security, responsible for providing personal protection and risk assessment for victims. Rena readily agreed. A lot of my buddies from the service need meaningful work, she said. Chloe also contacted me. She had lost weight but seemed to be in good spirits. She wanted to take a year off from college to volunteer at the foundation. Finish your degree first, I told her, pouring her a glass of water. There will be plenty of work for you to do later. She nodded, her eyes a little red. Miss Yuan, thank you. I really mean it. Call me Alara, I said, patting her hand. The past is the past. Living well is the best revenge. She nodded emphatically. In the first 3 months after the foundation's launch, we received over 400 requests for help. Wives whose husbands had swindled them out of their savings. Young women blackmailed with intimate photos by their boyfriends. Women hospitalized from domestic abuse but too afraid to speak out. Behind every letter was a life on the line. Rena read through a stack of letters and stubbed out her cigarette. There are more of them than I imagined. Which is why we have to do this right, I said, sorting the letters into categories and assigning them to different teams. One day, I received a special letter. The sender was a girl I didn't know. She wrote that she was one of Liam's ex-girlfriends. He had scammed her out of $50,000 and forced her to have 2 abortions. She said she saw my press conference on the news and cried all night. I used to think that bad men were just a matter of a bad match, she wrote. Now I know that some people are just born evil. Alara, you showed me there is light. I read the letter, folded it, and put it in my desk drawer. There will be more light, I told myself. A few days later, I went to the Mediterranean. Rena came with me, along with a few core members of the foundation. We set sail from Athens, on a new yacht, following the same route as that fateful trip, heading toward the sea that had nearly been my grave. The sea was calm that day, as blue as a boundless jewel. The breeze was pleasant, the sun warm. This is it, Rena said, checking the GPS. Our raft capsized around here. This is where you got that gash on your arm. I walked to the edge of the deck and looked down at the water. It was a deep, dark blue. This is where Arya fell, Rena said, standing beside me, her voice as soft as the sea wind. I didn't speak. I took a handful of white rose petals from a box and slowly scattered them into the sea. The petals landed on the water and were gently carried away by the waves, like a fleet of tiny white boats sailing toward the horizon. Arya, May, Sophia, I said loudly, to the sea, and all the other girls they murdered. You can rest now. The killers have been brought to justice. Your stories will be remembered. Rena scattered a handful of petals as well. Sis, I did it. The wind picked up, lifting the petals into the air, making them sparkle in the sunlight. I stood on the deck, looking at the sea that had almost swallowed me, and felt a wave of indescribable emotion. It wasn't fear, nor was it sadness. It was a sense of release. The old Alara, the naive girl who thought marriage was a safe harbor, was gone forever, scattered with those petals on the sea. And I had to keep going. After returning from the Mediterranean, I threw myself into the foundation's work. My days were filled with meetings with lawyers, investors, and women's rights groups. My nights were spent in meetings, reviewing cases, and approving documents. I was a whirlwind of activity. Rena said I was killing myself and urged me to rest, but I couldn't stop. The moment I paused, the images would flood back. The laughter on the deck, the bags of hair in the safe deposit box, Liam's face as he knelt and begged. I would rather work myself to death than be haunted by those ghosts. One afternoon, I had a meeting at the foundation with a potential partner, a woman in her 40s named Miss He, recommended by a state women's federation. She was sharp and articulate. Chairwoman Yuan, the work you're doing is incredible, she said with a smile. Many of our grassroots workers have heard of the White Rose Foundation. You're too kind, Miss He. We're just starting out, I said, pouring her a cup of tea. I have a few cases I'd like to collaborate on, she said, her tone serious. One is in a rural area. A woman has been married for 5 years, and her husband and mother-in-law beat her so badly she's in and out of the hospital. The village does nothing. The police call it a domestic dispute. Just as I was about to reply, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Rena. 6 words. Caleb Vance gave up his superior. My heart tightened, but I kept my composure. I continued my conversation with Miss He for another half hour, saw her out, and then immediately dialed Rena's number. What's going on? I asked. During his trial in Canada, Caleb Vance cut a deal to reduce his sentence. He gave up some information. Rena's voice was low. He said this network isn't just the Vance family. There's a transnational organization behind them. They specialize in finding wealthy, single women, sending in men disguised as successful professionals to marry them and steal their assets. Once they have the money, the woman accidentally dies, and the assets are laundered offshore. I took a deep breath. Who did he name? A code name. The matriarch, Rena said. He doesn't know her real name. Only that she's a very powerful woman based in Southeast Asia. The Swiss bank accounts Liam was using ultimately trace back to her. So, Liam's death was her doing. Almost certainly. I stood by the window, my mind racing. Liam was dead. Donovan and Sharon were in prison. But the person who actually got the money was still in the shadows. She knew I was alive. She knew I had flipped the table on her. She wouldn't let me go. Rena, increase security, I said. Upgrade it at all our victim shelters, and find out who was passing messages to Caleb in prison. Anyone who can get a message into a maximum security facility is not small time. Already on it, Rena said. Also, someone came to apply as a volunteer this afternoon. He looked familiar. Turns out he's a private investigator we looked into before. He used to do work for the Vances. Where is he? I had him wait in your office. I hung up and walked back to my office. A young man was sitting on the sofa. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with longish hair and a worn jacket. He jumped to his feet when I came in, looking anxious. Chairwoman Yuan, I mean no harm, he said quickly. Sit down. I used to do odd jobs in Athens, helping with rentals, translations, that sort of thing. Donovan Vance hired me when he was in town, to connect him with some locals. I didn't know what they were up to then. I do now. You do? I looked at him. It's all over the news, he said, looking down and wringing his hands. I came because I want to tell you what I know. Why? He hesitated. I had a sister. She died in Athens a few years ago, under mysterious circumstances. The police ruled it an accident, but I never believed it. After I saw your story, I asked around. She had contact with Donovan Vance's crew before she died. I sat up straight. What was your sister's name? Lily, he said, his eyes red. After she died, I stayed in Athens, working and trying to find out what happened. My sister couldn't swim, he said, his eyes welling up. She was terrified of water since she was a kid. There's no way she would have gone swimming alone at the beach. Rena handed him a tissue. What did you find out? I asked. There was a translator with Donovan's group named Old He. I got him drunk a few times and he let some things slip, Leo said, his voice low. He said there was a big shot behind Donovan, someone who provides them with resources, how to target someone, how to set the trap, how to clean up afterward. It's a full-service operation. Donovan and his crew were just the foot soldiers. Who is this big shot? Old He didn't know a real name, just that it was a woman with connections in Thailand and Cambodia. Everyone called her The matriarch. The matriarch again. A chill went down my spine. The Vances were vicious enough. If there was an even larger organization pulling the strings, this game was far from over. How do you find this matriarch? Rena asked. Leo pulled a crumpled business card from his pocket and handed it to me. It had a single line of text and an address in Bangkok, printed in elegant Chinese characters. Golden Lotus Club, Sukhumvit Road, Bangkok. Old? He said people who need her go there to find her, Leo said. I flipped the card over. On the back was a number. 047. What's this? I asked, looking at the number. A referral code, Leo said. Old He's code. The club will only see you if you have a referral. Rena took the card, examined it, and searched the address on her phone. After a moment, she looked at me. Are we going? Yes, I said. Are you sure? Rena's brow furrowed. That place is dangerous. If we don't go, there will be another Liam Vance, another Lily. I stood up. I'm done waiting for people to come after me. 3 days later, I booked flights to Bangkok for myself and my team, under the guise of the White Rose Foundation, attending a Southeast Asian women's rights symposium. Before I left, I went to my father's house. Dad, I might be gone for a while. I sat in a wicker chair in his study, looking out at the garden. To Bangkok? He asked. I was surprised. Mr. Adler already told me. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Elara, the business with Liam nearly cost you your life. Now you're willingly jumping into that swamp. I don't approve. Dad, I said softly, looking at him. You used to teach me that in business, you can't just look at the short term. But the most important thing you taught me wasn't how to make money. It was how to protect myself. What I have to learn now is how not to let others die for me. My father was silent. After a while, he opened a drawer and took out a box. Inside was a key and a business card. An old classmate of your mother's lives in Bangkok. He used to be a police detective in the States, then went into the logistics business in Thailand. He has connections there. He handed me the key. This is for a small apartment I own in Bangkok. It's in a secluded location. You'll stay there. His name is Mr. Russo. I took the key, my eyes getting hot. Dad. Thank you. Don't thank me, he said, waving his hand, his face full of concern. Just promise me you'll come back in one piece. I promise. I smiled and hugged him. The afternoon sun streamed in, illuminating his graying hair. I looked at him and suddenly felt that if I hadn't gone through all this, I might never have truly known this man, and I might never have known myself. The monsoon season had arrived in Bangkok. When Rena and I landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport, it was pouring rain. The drops hammered against the car window, threatening to punch through the roof. A man sent by Mr. Russo picked us up and drove us to an old apartment building near the Chao Phraya River. The room was small but clean. Rena put down her luggage, checked the doors and windows, and did a quick recon of the building. Lots of canals around here. 7 possible escape routes, she reported upon her return, like she was giving a tactical briefing. You really are a soldier, I said, standing by the window, watching the rain-soaked street below. Tomorrow, we go to the Golden Lotus Club. Go straight in? She raised an eyebrow. First, we recon, I said. We bring nothing. Just act like tourists. See what happens. The next day, the sky cleared, leaving a humid, earthy smell in the air. The Golden Lotus Club didn't look like much from the outside, squeezed between a massage parlor and a nightclub. A narrow facade, a small golden sign. A burly man with a snake tattoo on his arm stood guard at the door. What do we do? I whispered. Walk right in, Rena said. In a place like this, the more you hesitate, the more you stand out. She took my arm, and we walked to the door. The bouncer stopped us and said something in Thai. Rena didn't speak Thai, but she pulled out the business card Leo had given us. The bouncer glanced at the card, then at us, and asked in broken English, Referral? 047, I replied. The bouncer spoke into a walkie-talkie. She was in her 30s. her makeup so thick you couldn't see her real face. She looked us up and down, then forced a smile. "Ladies, please come in." We walked inside. The lighting was dim, soft music was playing, and people of all sorts, older, white men, Middle Eastern-looking men, were sitting at tables, speaking in low voices. The woman in gold led us to a corner table. "A menu for you," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Who are you looking for?" "Old he sent us," Rena said, flipping through the menu. "He said we could meet some resourceful friends here." "Which old he?" "The one from Athens," I said, my voice casual. "He told me to find the matriarch." The woman's smile froze for a second, then returned. "The matriarch is not here, but I can arrange for you to meet someone else." "We're only looking for the matriarch," Rena said, closing the menu and standing up. "Since she's not here, we'll come back another time." We got up and left. The woman in gold didn't stop us, just watched us go. "She was confirming who we are," Rena said in a low voice once we were outside. "Our names are probably on a watch list now." I nodded. "Let's go back and figure out our next move." Over the next week, we moved between 3 different hotels and hired a local ex-cop as a temporary driver. Rena also used Mr. Russo's connections to acquire some equipment. Just as we thought the trail was going cold, a text message came from an unknown number. "Golden Lotus. Tomorrow, 10 p.m. The matriarch will see you." The message was sent to me. Just that one line, followed by an address. I showed it to Rena. "It's a trap," she said. "I know." I stood at the hotel window, looking out at the Bangkok night. The city was a sea of neon lights and flowing traffic. How many girls like Lily were hidden beneath these lights, unable to go home? "And you're still going?" Rena came to my side. I smiled. "They want to see me, which means they're getting desperate. And a desperate opponent makes mistakes. But if you go, you're walking into your own death," Rena said, her voice sharp with anger. "Which is why I'm not going alone." I turned to her. "Rena, I need you to do 3 things for me." "Name them." "First, contact Mr. Russo. Have his people watch the club. Second, contact Erin Schmidt. Send a file to her encrypted email. Third," I took out a pen and wrote a few lines on a piece of paper, handing it to her. Rena read it, and her eyes lit up. "You're going to be the bait. They want to lure me in," I said with a smile, "so I'll swim right onto their hook." I took a new dress from the closet. "Tomorrow night, I'm going to dress up and meet this matriarch." The night grew deeper. The neon lights outside reflected on the window like countless prying eyes. I drew the curtains and began to prepare. No one knew what tomorrow would bring, but I knew I was getting closer to the answer. Liam Vance was just a pawn. The woman behind him, the one pulling the strings from the shadows, was the real target. And I, Elara Yuan, was about to tear her web apart. At 9:30 p.m., I stood before the hotel mirror, applying my lipstick just right. I wore a deep red cocktail dress that ended above the knee and a pair of black stiletto heels. My hair was down, covering the micro GPS tracker taped behind my ear. Rena sat on the edge of the bed and handed me a lipstick-shaped taser. "Put this in your purse," she said. "Metal detectors won't pick it up, but don't let anyone touch your bag." I took it and put it in my clutch. The bag also contained a smartphone, screen set to one-touch record. "They will definitely take your phone," Rena said. "Which is why I have 2. I pulled an old flip phone from my closet and slipped it into another pocket. "If they ask for one, I'll give them this one." Rena nodded. "My people will be mixed in at the club. No matter how long you're in there, just hold on." "I know." I walked to the window and glanced at the traffic below. "Is everything else set?" "Mr. Russo's people are already inside the club. The massage parlor across the street is now an Interpol observation post, with their Bangkok liaison officer on site. But they can't move without evidence." "There will be evidence," I said, turning and patting her shoulder. "I'm going." At 9:50, I took a tuk-tuk to Sukhumvit Road. The alley's neon lights were even more glaring at night. The humid air was a mix of food smells and exhaust fumes. The same bouncer with the snake tattoo was at the door of the Golden Lotus Club. I walked up, took off my sunglasses, and said in English, "My name is Yuan." I have an appointment with the matriarch. The bouncer looked at me, then pushed the door open. The main hall was even more crowded than last time. A few older white men were drinking with local girls in corner booths. The music was quiet, which only made the atmosphere feel more oppressive. The same woman in the gold dress approached, her smile more natural this time. "Miss Yuan, the matriarch is waiting for you upstairs." She led me across the hall and up a narrow spiral staircase. The second floor was a hallway with a red carpet and closed wooden doors on either side. At the end of the hall was a set of double doors, guarded by two men, one tall and thin, the other short and stout. The woman in gold knocked. The door opened from the inside. I walked in. The room was large, decorated like a traditional Chinese sitting room with mahogany furniture, a peony screen, and a golden Buddha statue in the corner. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, masking any other smell. A woman was sitting on a large wooden daybed. She looked to be in her 50s, her hair in an elegant bun. She wore a black cheongsam, embroidered with gold thread, and a brilliant green jade bracelet on her wrist. Her face was well maintained, but the lines around her eyes and mouth betrayed her age. She saw me and smiled, beckoning. "Miss Yuan, please, sit. You carry yourself with the grace of someone from a prominent family." I sat across from her, placing my purse by my side. I didn't touch the tea on the table. "You're the matriarch?" I asked. "That's what they call me." She picked up her teacup and blew on it gently. "My name is Jasmine Kim. You can call me Auntie Kim." "Auntie Kim," I repeated, looking her directly in the eye. "Was Liam Vance your son?" Her hand paused, the tea in her cup rippling slightly. She looked up, her gaze shifting from gentle to something else, like a razor blade emerging from velvet. "That old fool Donovan must have been talking before he died," she said slowly, putting down her cup. "I cut ties with him long ago, and he was not worthy of being my son. And Sharon Vance wasn't his biological mother," I continued. I checked. Liam Vance was born in Bangkok. The name on the birth certificate was Jasmine Kim. The room was silent for a few seconds. Then, Jasmine Kim laughed. It was a grating sound, like sandpaper on wood. "You know a lot. Do you know why I agreed to see you?" "Because you want to know how much I have on you," I said. "Clever girl," she nodded. "A pity that clever people don't live long." I smiled. Donovan Vance thought the same thing. Her eyes grew colder. "Miss Yuan, I don't like to beat around the bush. Hand over everything you recorded on the yacht, everything you photographed in the Swiss bank, and I'll let you walk out of here alive." "Let me walk out alive? Or let me walk out to my death?" I stood up and looked down at her. When Liam Vance knelt and begged me for a second chance, he also promised to change. Then he ended up dead in his cell under mysterious circumstances. "You think I'd believe you?" "You're not walking out of this room today." Jasmine Kim's voice was soft, but each word landed like a stone in a well. "If I don't walk out, none of you will live either." I picked up my purse and took out the recording phone. "I've been recording this entire time. You think your club is secure, but the signal has already been sent." As soon as the words left my mouth, the lights in the room went out. It happened without warning. I instinctively dropped to the floor and rolled toward the daybed. In the darkness, I heard a whoosh as something heavy smashed into the floor where I had just been standing. "Don't let her get away!" Jasmine Kim shrieked. I crawled along the wall, heading for the door, my heart pounding. Someone turned on a flashlight, its beam dancing wildly. I saw the two guards from the door rushing in, short clubs in their hands. I fumbled for the doorknob, twisted it, it wasn't locked, and yanked it open, tumbling into the hallway. The hallway was dark too, lit only by the faint green glow of an emergency exit sign. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the spiral staircase. I had only taken a few steps when someone grabbed my hair from behind and yanked me backward. I slammed into the wall, my head hitting it with a dull thud. "Where do you think you're going?" It was the woman in the gold dress. She grabbed my arm and punched me in the stomach. I doubled over in pain, using the opportunity to grab the lipstick taser from my purse. I jabbed it into her arm. The taser crackled, and the woman screamed, letting go. I ran. The staircase was just a few feet away. I grabbed the railing with one hand and vaulted over the side. landing on the stairs below. Footsteps and curses followed me. When I reached the ground floor, I saw that the entrance was blocked by several men in black. The club's patrons and girls were cowering in the corners, some filming with their phones, others covering their heads. "Get her! Don't let her out!" Jasmine Kim's sharp voice came from upstairs. I turned and ran down another hallway, the one leading to the kitchen and the staff exit, a route Rena had scouted. I burst through a swinging door and found myself in a back alley filled with trash cans. A rusty black pickup truck was parked there. Mr. Russo's people should be nearby. I ran out of the alley, about to call for help, when something cold and hard pressed into my back. "Don't move," a man's hoarse voice said from behind me. It was the bouncer with the snake tattoo. He was holding a knife to my back. "Miss Yuan," the matriarch said, "you can still turn back now. Turn back and negotiate with you?" I sneered. "She's not worthy." The words had barely left my mouth when the sound of screeching tires filled the alley. Two vans stopped abruptly, their doors sliding open. 7 or 8 men in plain clothes, holding guns, jumped out. "Police! Nobody move!" someone shouted in both Thai and Chinese. The bouncer froze. I bit his arm. Hard. He yelped in pain and loosened his grip on the knife. I used all my strength to duck under his arm and scramble away. The men from the vans quickly subdued the bouncer and the woman in gold. I leaned against a damp wall, panting. Rena got out of one of the vans and rushed to my side. "Are you okay?" I waved my hand. "Fine. Just a little weak in the knees." "Where's the matriarch?" "Still inside," she said. "She's not getting out. All exits are sealed." Rena nodded and gestured to a few of the officers. They stormed into the club. Screams and the sounds of a struggle erupted from inside. I leaned against the wall, watching the flashing police lights at the end of the alley. I didn't relax. Jasmine Kim had run this club for years. She wouldn't have just a few men. She had to have a backup plan. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a muffled gunshot came from the second floor. Rena and I both looked up. "There's another exit," I said, about to run back in. Rena grabbed me. "They can handle it. You are not going back in there to die." I gritted my teeth and stopped. Another few gunshots rang out, followed by the sound of breaking glass. I ran around to the other side of the club and saw a dark figure jump from a second-story window onto the roof of an adjacent one-story building. It was Jasmine Kim. She was still in her gyeongsam, but she moved with the agility of a cat. After landing, she didn't look back, quickly disappearing over the rooftops into the night. "She's over there!" I yelled, pointing. Several officers gave chase. Rena vaulted over a wall and followed. I didn't hesitate. I kicked off my heels and climbed after them, running barefoot across the slippery roof tiles. Jasmine Kim was fast. For a woman in her 50s, she moved with a practiced ease, leaping from roof to roof. We chased her over several buildings before she jumped down into a narrower alley and vanished around a corner. Rena reached the alley, looked both ways, and cursed. "It's a fork in the road. She must have had a vehicle waiting." I stood on the roof, the night wind chilling me to the bone. The breeze from the Chao Phraya River carried the smell of fish and dampness. "She won't get far," I said, panting. "We'll catch her eventually." Rena looked back at me. "But we at least took down her club today." "It's not enough." I stared in the direction Jasmine Kim had disappeared. "As long as she's free, this network will continue." Rena didn't say anything, just placed a hand on my shoulder. Just then, the phone in my pocket vibrated. I took it out. It was an email from an unknown address, containing only a single photo. It was a woman's passport page. The name read, Jasmine Kim. I stared at the photo. The face was strangely familiar. "What is it?" Rena asked. I zoomed in on the picture. The Jasmine Kim in the photo was much younger. The resemblance was undeniable. She looked almost exactly like Sharon Vance. "Rena," I whispered. "Jasmine Kim and Sharon Vance. I think they might be sisters." Rena leaned in, her expression changing as she saw the photo. "Are you sure?" "I'm not, but the resemblance is too strong." I put the phone away. "If they are sisters, then Liam's biological mother and his adoptive mother were in this together from the start. This web is bigger and more twisted than we ever imagined. The sound of sirens grew louder in the alley below, the red and blue lights tearing through the Bangkok night. I stood on that foreign rooftop, looking down at the endless maze of streets, and felt the string inside me pull even tighter. Back at the apartment, I didn't even bother to shower. I opened my laptop and sent the passport photo to Erin Schmidt. An hour later, she replied. She had found Jasmine Kim's background. Her family was originally from Fujian, China. She was married off to a man in Bangkok over 30 years ago. After a divorce, she married a European man who died suddenly, leaving her a hotel and several properties. Later, she partnered with someone to open the Golden Lotus Club, starting in the tourism industry and gradually moving into human trafficking and transnational fraud. She has a sister, Erin wrote, named Sharon. She had a daughter who did not survive infancy. Liam Vance's biological mother is indeed Jasmine Kim. Donovan was his adoptive father, but they told everyone he was the biological father. My fingers on the mouse went white. Sharon and Jasmine were a team, Rena said, reading over my shoulder, her voice cold. One picked the men in the States, the other laundered the money overseas. Donovan and Liam were just pawns. They pushed to the front. So Jasmine's European husband also died in an accident, I said coldly. She was never a victim, she was a beneficiary. Yes, Rena said. And she was using the same method to replicate her success with other women. The next day, the Thai police provided the initial interrogation results. The woman in the gold dress, whose name was Bao, was Jasmine Kim's personal manager, responsible for high-end clients. She confessed that Jasmine would select wealthy, single female clients at the club, have young male escorts seduce them, and then use marriage to acquire their assets. And what happened after they got the money? I asked Mr. Russo over the phone. Bao said some were taken to Cambodia, some were sent back to their home countries. In any case, they were never heard from again. Mr. Russo's voice was grim. The men's backgrounds were often fabricated, and the marriage certificates were fake. This network has been operating for over a decade. The victims aren't just from China, but other Southeast Asian countries as well. I hung up and walked out onto the balcony. The Bangkok sun was scorching. In the alley below, vendors were hawking their wares. I looked at them and thought of Lily, the girl who was too afraid to even swim. She was one of the many swallowed by this network. Rena, I'm going to expose all of this, I said. How? She asked. Using the thing they're best at, I replied, turning around. A press conference. Right here in Bangkok. I'm going to expose Jasmine Kim's entire network in front of the world and drag everyone hiding in the shadows into the light. Rena thought for a moment. That's too risky. Jasmine Kim is still at large. Her people could come after you at any time. That's why we have to make her come to me, I said with a cold smile. She's most afraid of the evidence I have. If she knows I'm holding a global press conference, do you think she'll send someone again? Rena stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll make the arrangements. This time, we won't let her get away. 3 days later, I released a statement from the Swiss hotel in Bangkok. The White Rose Foundation would be holding a global press conference to reveal the complete evidence chain of the Jasmine Kim Group's transnational marriage murder ring. The announcement was explosive. Media from over a dozen countries requested press credentials. The Thai police assigned a liaison officer. For the first time, Jasmine Kim's name was public. The press conference was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. That morning, I received a text message. Don't do it. Or, your family won't live to see the night. I stared at the screen, my fingers cold. Rena snatched the phone, her face grim. She's losing it. This is what I was waiting for, I said, taking a deep breath. Are my parents secure? Yes. We have people guarding your house around the clock, and your parents have been moved to a safe house, Rena said. But Jasmine Kim is a cornered animal. She might try to cause a scene at the conference. That's why we have to set a trap for her. I went to the closet and took out the white pantsuit I had prepared. Today, I'm going to show the world who is living in the light. At 1 p.m., the press conference began. The hall was packed, with 2 full rows of cameras. I stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, and felt a sense of déjà vu. Months ago, in Geneva, I had taken off my sunglasses and sent Liam Vance to hell. Today, I would do the same to his mother and her entire criminal empire. Good afternoon, everyone. I began, my voice clear and strong. My name is Ilara Yuan. The flashbulbs went crazy. Today, I am here to expose a transnational criminal organization that has existed for over 30 years. They have used marriage to murder at least 17 women and have stolen over $1 billion. Their leader is a woman named Jasmine Kim. She is also the biological mother of my late ex-husband, Liam Vance. The room erupted. Just then, the main doors of the conference hall were thrown open. Everyone's attention snapped to the entrance. Several men in black suits stormed in, holding guns and yelling in Thai. The room descended into panic. Reporters dove for cover. I stood on the stage, unmoving. Rena burst out from a side door and stood in front of me, a gun now in her hand, one Mr. Russo had arranged through his police contacts. Everybody down! The lead man in black, a vicious-looking man with a scar running from his eyebrow to his chin, walked toward me. Jasmine Kim sent you, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Cut the crap. Hand over the evidence, he said, aiming his gun at me. I glanced at the large screen on the stage. It had switched to a live feed. Through my earpiece, I heard Mr. Russo's urgent voice. The perimeter is secure. Interpol is in position. Stall him for 30 seconds. 30 seconds? I thought. I looked up at the scar-faced man and smiled. You want? Come and get it yourself. The man hesitated, but greed won out. He walked toward me, reaching for my collar. Down! Rena hissed in my ear. Without a second's thought, I dropped to the ground. The man grabbed at empty air. The next second, Rena's gun went off. The bullet hit the man's wrist, and his gun clattered to the floor. He screamed, clutching his hand. Before his men could react, Interpol and Thai special forces swarmed in from all directions, pinning them to the ground. The whole thing took less than 20 seconds. The reporters, recovering from their shock, started filming like mad. In the chaos, I didn't see Jasmine Kim. Where is she? I asked Rena, standing up. Don't know. Probably didn't come herself, Rena said, holstering her gun and scanning the room. I strode to a side door, now blocked by a police line. Miss Yuan, an Interpol officer said. We caught 3 lookouts outside, but we didn't find Jasmine Kim herself. She's likely waiting for news. I turned and looked at the big screen. The live feed was still on. The whole world had just watched the raid. If Jasmine Kim saw that I had her men, she would become even more desperate. She thought I would be scared, I said in a low voice. But she doesn't know. I was waiting for her to snap. The next day, Jasmine Kim was placed on Interpol's red notice list. The Thai police released her photo and passport information, offering a 1 million baht reward. All assets of the Golden Lotus Club were frozen, and its associates were arrested one by one. But Jasmine Kim herself had vanished like a snake into deep water. A week later, I received a package. It was a cardboard box. Inside was a bouquet of white roses, their petals already withered. Underneath the flowers was a photo, a picture of me with my parents. On the back, 5 words were written in red ink. I will remember you. I stared at the photo, my fingers trembling slightly. Rena snatched it from my hand and examined the box and shipping label. It was sent from Phnom Penh, Cambodia. She's in Cambodia, Rena said. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them, the fire inside me burned hotter. Get ready, I said. We're going to Phnom Penh. You're going yourself? Again? Rena's brow furrowed. It's too dangerous. She sent this to scare me. If I hide, I'm admitting defeat. I stood up and walked to the window, looking at the distant spires of the Grand Palace. She wants to play? I'll play to the end. Rena was silent for a moment, then said, I'm with you. I turned to her and smiled. I know you are. The next morning, we flew from Bangkok to Phnom Penh. We were accompanied by an officer from Interpol's Cambodia Liaison Office and a local guide recommended by Mr. Russo. The plane broke through the thick clouds into a blinding white expanse. I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes. But my mind was racing. If Jasmine Kim could hide in Cambodia, it meant she had a long-established network there too. It was a dragon's den. But my life was something I had dragged back from the bottom of the sea. What was there to be afraid of? An hour later, the plane landed. As we stepped out of the airport, a wave of heat hit us. I put on my sunglasses and got into an armored car. The city outside the window was similar to Bangkok but older, more crowded. The Mekong River flowed slowly by. "We're going to a safe house first," Rena said. "Someone will pick us up tonight." I didn't ask questions. The car navigated through the chaotic traffic and stopped in a quiet alley. We got out and followed the guide into a nondescript 3-story building. The safe house was on the 3rd floor. The room was small, with bars on the windows. Rena checked everything and drew the curtains. "Where are we going tonight?" I asked. According to our intel, Jasmine Kim might be hiding at a place called the Phnom Penh Entertainment City. It's a casino run by one of her old partners. A casino? I raised an eyebrow. "It'll be full of her people, which is why we can't go in guns blazing," Rena said, pulling out her phone and opening a satellite map. "The casino is on the river. There's an abandoned pier behind it. At 10 p.m. tonight, local smugglers are making a handoff. You'll go in disguised as a Chinese businesswoman. I'll cover the perimeter." I nodded. "What do I need to bring?" "A lipstick," she said, looking at me. "And your brain." I smiled. "You always tell me to bring that. Because it's your most lethal weapon." Night fell quickly. Phnom Penh at night lacked Bangkok's bright neon, the air filled with dust and the smell of diesel. I changed into a black lace dress, my hair pinned up, the tracking chip behind my ear. In my pocket was a single lipstick-shaped recording pen. "At Noah, Chinzech." I followed the guide into the Phnom Penh Entertainment City. It was much larger than the Golden Lotus Club, like a miniature palace. Behind the glass doors was a glittering hall with 2 lines of hostesses in Cheongsams, greeting guests in Chinese, Khmer, and English. I took out the VIP card Mr. Russo had arranged for me. The front desk girl's smile widened. "Your private room is on the 3rd floor. Please follow me." I followed her through the casino floor. It was a cacophony of voices and noise, the gambling tables packed with people. I noticed several waiters with bulging waists and earpieces, their eyes constantly scanning the room. We reached the 3rd floor. 2 large men stood guard at the door to a private room. The hostess spoke into her walkie-talkie, and the door opened. Inside, 5 or 6 people were playing cards around a table, surrounded by stacks of chips and glasses of liquor. One of them, a woman in a red lace dress, looked up as I entered. She was older but well-preserved, looking no more than 30. Her eyes, however, held a sharp glint. It wasn't Jasmine Kim. "So this is Boss Yuan," she said, standing and walking toward me with a smile. "I'm the manager here. Just call me Sister Lin. I hear you've come from Bangkok and like to play a few hands." "Just for fun," I said, sitting down across from her and placing my clutch on the table. "Of course," Sister Lin said, pouring me a drink. She gave a subtle look to the others at the table, who quickly excused themselves. Soon, it was just the 2 of us. "Boss Yuan," Sister Lin said suddenly, her voice low. "Jasmine isn't here. She wanted me to give you a message. She said you can't win. What happened in Thailand will eventually blow over. If you back off now, she'll let you take your parents' lives with you." I smiled, picked up the glass, sniffed it, but didn't drink. "If a single hair on my parents' heads is touched, I will make her wish she were never born." Sister Lin's smile froze, her eyes turning cold. "Miss Yuan, you seem to think this is Thailand. The water here is much deeper than the sea. No matter how deep it is, it's not as deep as the Mediterranean," I said, putting down the glass. "I crawled back from there alive. You think I'm afraid of a river in Phnom Penh?" Suddenly, the door was thrown open, and 7 or 8 thugs rushed in, blocking the exit. Sister Lin stood up and retreated behind them, her smile completely gone. "Jasmine said that no matter what, you are not leaving here alive tonight." I stood up slowly, my back against a pillar, my fingers finding the lipstick recorder in my pocket and pressing the button. "You're going to kill me here? In front of all these people?" I gestured toward the main hall outside the room. "There are dozens of cameras downstairs, and Interpol is right outside." Sister Lynn's expression changed. She whispered something to one of the thugs, who pulled out his phone. A few seconds later, his face changed too. He shook his head at her. "There are police cars outside," he whispered. Sister Lynn slapped him across the face. "Useless! A bunch of useless fools!" I laughed. "Did you really think I'd walk in here so brazenly just to die?" The words had barely left my mouth when I grabbed a liquor bottle from the table and threw it at Sister Lynn. She dodged, and the bottle shattered against the wall. In the confusion, I ran for the door. The thugs were caught off guard, and I was already in the hallway. From the stairwell, Rena appeared with several people. She waved, and I sprinted toward her. "Her men are all upstairs," I panted. "I know. There's a boat at the back." We charged down the stairs, through the staff corridors, and out the back door into the same abandoned alley. At the end of the alley was a grassy riverbank. The river was dark, with a few lights on the opposite shore. A wooden boat was waiting, a thin, old boatman at the helm. "Go," Rena shouted. The boatman started the engine. We jumped on board, nearly capsizing the boat. "They're coming!" I looked back and saw several thugs running out of the back door, knives in their hands. Rena crouched at the stern, pulled something out, and threw it onto the bank. A few seconds later, a thick cloud of white smoke erupted, sending the men stumbling back, coughing, and covering their faces. "Tear gas," Rena said, grinning as she returned to the cabin. "That should give them something to think about." The boat pulled away from the shore and into the dark river. I was soaked, whether from the river's humidity or my own sweat, I couldn't tell. In the distance, the neon sign of the Phnom Penh Entertainment City grew smaller and smaller. "Now Jasmine Kim is even more desperate," Rena said. I nodded, panting, and looked down at my hand. A piece of glass from the bottle had cut my palm, and blood was slowly seeping out. I tore a strip from my dress and wrapped it around the wound. "Next time," I said, staring at the water, my voice low but firm, "I will catch her myself." The boat traveled on the Mekong for 20 minutes before turning into a narrower tributary and docking at a small pier. We were met by a gray van and driven to a temporary outpost in the suburbs. At the outpost, I met someone I didn't expect, Erin Schmidt. She was in her 40s, blonde, with gold-rimmed glasses, wearing a bulletproof vest. She was in a heated discussion with several other Westerners in front of a computer. When she saw me, she stood up and came over to shake my hand. "Miss Yuan, a pleasure to finally meet you in person," she said in fluent Chinese. "You're even more impressive than you are on video. Reporters on the front lines now?" I managed a weak smile. "This case is big enough to be worth it." She had me sit down. "Jasmine Kim is more than just a human trafficker. We've been tracking her for 3 years. She's behind a money laundering chain that runs from Southeast Asia to Europe. Over $200 million flows through the Golden Lotus Club every year." $200 million? I repeated, my mind reeling. "So Interpol has been after her for a while," I realized. "Yes, but we were always missing the core evidence," Erin said. "The information you have filled in the final piece of the puzzle." I nodded, feeling like my body was about to fall apart. Rena handed me a cup of hot water. I took a sip, the warmth spreading through me. "What's next?" I asked. "She can't escape," Erin said, pushing up her glasses. "We have informants at all her possible hiding spots. The moment she shows her face, we'll close the net." "But she won't show her face," I said, putting down the cup. "She's far more cunning than Liam Vance. She's definitely planning her escape from Southeast Asia. Which is why we have to make her think that the most dangerous place is the safest," Erin said, a slight smile on her face. She pulled out a map. "For example, going to China." I froze. "She wants to flee to China?" "No," Erin said, tapping a spot on the map with her finger. "She's going to a place you'd never expect. Your hometown." "What?" I jumped to my feet. "The most dangerous place is the safest place," Erin repeated. No one would ever think a wanted fugitive would run straight into the victim's home turf, and she has an ace up her sleeve there. A chill ran down my spine. What ace? Sharon Vance had another sister, Helen, who lives in Zhejiang. She has no criminal record, but her bank records show she receives a quarterly payment from a company linked to Jasmine Kim. Rena and I looked at each other and said almost in unison, Helen. Yes, Aaron said. It's highly likely that Jasmine Kim will go to Helen for help, use her identity as cover, and then try to smuggle herself out of the country from the Zhejiang coast. I took a deep breath. Then we're going back to China immediately. Not so fast, Aaron said, patting my shoulder. There's one more important thing to do. What's that? Push her into a corner. Force her to go back. Aaron smiled. You were going to hold a press conference, weren't you? The next one will be in your hometown. I stared at her, then slowly, a smile spread across my face. 3 days later, I was on a flight back home. The plane landed in Hangzhou, in a light rain. My mother had sent a car. I sat in the back, looking out at the familiar city, a storm of emotions churning inside me. It had been almost a year since I had left for my honeymoon. In that year, I had died once and been reborn. I wasn't coming back to hide and cry. I was coming back to drag the last demon out of the shadows. The car drove to a discreet villa in the suburbs where my parents were staying with several bodyguards. The moment my mom saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She held me, looking me over, then turned to Rena, repeating, "Such a good girl." "Mom, I'm fine now," I said, holding her hand, trying to sound cheerful. "Fine? Look how thin you've gotten," my mom cried. My dad stood by, silent, but gave a firm, supportive nod. We settled into the safe house. Rena and her team upgraded the surveillance and security systems. Intel from Mr. Russo's network in Bangkok kept coming in. Jasmine Kim seemed to have vanished. It had been 2 weeks since the red notice was issued, with no credible sightings. "She's waiting," Rena said, leaning back on the sofa. "Waiting for us to let our guard down. For the heat to die off. She's patient." "Then let's give her a flaw to exploit," I said, looking at my phone. "Any movement from Helen? The police are monitoring her. She's still running her beauty salon, going to and from work on schedule. Nothing unusual." "That's what's unusual," I frowned. A normal person would have some reaction after hearing their sister is a wanted fugitive. The fact that she's acting so normal means she already knew. "You think she's playing bait?" Rena asked. "Not bait, a messenger." I stood and walked to the window. A place like a beauty salon, with people coming and going all day, is the perfect place to pass information. Rena nodded. "I'll have someone focus on the salon." "No," I said, turning around. "I'll go myself." Helen's beauty salon was on a pedestrian street downtown. The shop was small but elegantly decorated. It was mid-afternoon, and there weren't many customers. I wore a simple sweater and, with Rena, walked in. A young receptionist greeted us warmly. "What can I do for you today?" "We're looking for your boss," I said calmly. "She's upstairs. I'll get her." A few moments later, Helen came down. She was in her 50s, slightly plump, with short hair and a kind-looking smile. "Can I help you, ladies?" she asked, sizing us up. "I'm Alara Yuan," I said, meeting her eyes. Her smile froze for a second but quickly returned. "Oh, Miss Yuan, I've seen you on the news. Please, sit down. You know who I am, so I won't beat around the bush." I sat on a nearby sofa. Rena stood beside me. "Where is Jasmine Kim?" Helen's face changed. "Miss Yuan, I don't know what you're talking about. Isn't she a wanted fugitive? I haven't been in contact with her for a long time." "Really?" I smiled. "But your bank account has received a payment from an account in Phnom Penh every quarter for the past 3 years. 13 transactions in total, nearly 4 million yuan. How do you explain that?" Helen's face went white, her lips trembling. That was my share from a business we invested in together. No, it was money she owed me from a long time ago. "Helen, do you know what the penalty is for harboring a fugitive on Interpol's red notice list?" My voice was quiet but heavy with meaning. She crumpled, collapsing into the chair behind the counter. I I can't say, she sobbed. She'll kill me. She had her own son killed. What am I, her cousin, to her? She had her own son killed. I seized on that. She had Liam Vance killed? Helen flinched but said nothing. If you help us find her, I can explain to the police that you were coerced, I said, softening my tone. If you continue to cover for her, when she goes down, you'll be the first to go to prison. Helen covered her face, her shoulders shaking with sobs. After a long while, she looked up, her voice barely a whisper. She might be in Joshan. Joshan? She has an old lover there, a fishing boat captain. He's helped her transport goods and people before, Helen said. She called me last month and told me that if she ever disappeared, I should tell people to look for Old Chen in Joshan. Rena quickly wrote down the name, Old Chen. Did you tell her we would come looking for you? I asked. No. I wouldn't dare. Helen shook her head vehemently. I knew you would come, but I really don't know what she's planning. She said she wanted to leave the country by sea from there. I stood up and walked over to her, lowering my voice. If Jasmine Kim contacts you again, you know what to do. She nodded frantically. After leaving the salon, I immediately called Aaron. Interpol's China office quickly identified Old Chen in Zhoushan. Chen Guofu, a local who ran a fishing company out of the Shenjiamen fishing port. He owned 2 boats and frequently transported goods in the coastal waters. Jasmine Kim is going to Zhoushan to escape by sea, into international waters, and then on to another country, Rena said. We can't let her get on that boat. I opened the car door. We're going to Zhoushan directly. I'll take a team to Shenjiamen. You stay here. Rena tried to stop me. Rena, I have to see this through to the end. I looked at her, my eyes serious. This started on my honeymoon. I have to be the one to finish it. Rena was silent for a few seconds, then finally nodded. That night, we drove to Zhoushan. At 3 a.m., the Shenjiamen fishing port was filled with the strong smell of fish and the sea. Our car was parked near a derelict cold storage facility, a few hundred yards from the docks. Rena had brought 3 of her old army buddies. Aaron had also coordinated with the local Coast Guard, who were deployed on the perimeter. Old Chen's boat is at Pier 3, Rena said, pointing ahead. There have been people loading things onto the deck all night. I looked through the car window. The fishing boat wasn't large. A few yellow lights illuminated the deck, where 3 or 4 men were hauling boxes aboard. The boxes were marked seafood, but the men were straining under their weight. Probably cash or gold, Rena observed, her eyes narrowed. Is Jasmine Kim on board? I asked. Not sure, but Old Chen is definitely there. Rena looked at me. The Coast Guard has the sea exit covered. The moment that boat leaves the port, they'll intercept it. But while it's docked, we need to raid it directly. A raid, I said. Fast and decisive. Rena nodded and spoke quietly into her walkie-talkie. She pushed open the car door, and the night wind sent a shiver through me. We moved through the shadows of the port, past mountains of fishing nets and buoys. We were 50 yards from Pier 3 when the lights on the boat suddenly went out. They spotted us, Rena whispered, drawing her pistol. I ducked lower, staying close to the warehouse wall. Sure enough, we heard people running and shouting on the deck. In the distance, several powerful searchlights lit up the water. It was the Coast Guard. Vessel at Shenjiamen port. You are ordered to stop your vessel immediately for inspection. Repeat, stop your vessel immediately for inspection. The Coast Guard's announcement cut through the night. The fishing boat's engine roared to life, and it pulled away from the pier. The Coast Guard's speedboats gave chase. We ran to the edge of the dock and saw the fishing boat was already heading for open water. Go, Rena waved. We jumped onto a speedboat the Coast Guard had left for us. 2 officers drove while we crouched in the back. The wind was so strong I could barely open my eyes. The fishing boat was fast, but the Coast Guard speedboats gradually closed in. They flanked it on both sides, the calls to surrender getting louder. Suddenly, men on the fishing boat's deck raised guns and started firing at us. Get down! Rena pushed me down into the cabin. Bullets whizzed over our heads, sparking as they hit the metal hull. The Coast Guard immediately returned fire. A gun battle erupted at sea, the sound deafening. I lay on the floor of the cabin, my heart pounding. A few minutes later, the fishing boat's engine died. There was a crash and the sound of people falling into the water. I looked up. One of the Coast Guard boats had rammed the fishing boat. Its engine was out, and the men on board were being subdued one by special police. "It's clear," Rena said, standing up and offering me a hand. I took her hand and stood up. The wind whipped my hair across my face, the salt and sweat stinging my eyes. We boarded the fishing boat. 7 or 8 men were kneeling on the deck in handcuffs. Among them was old Chen, his face a mask of rage, still cursing as an officer held him down. I walked up to him. "Where is Jasmine Kim?" Old Chen looked up at me and snorted, saying nothing. Rena grabbed his collar. "He asked you a question. Where is she?" "I don't know. She never got on the boat." Old Chen gritted out. I stared at him. Then I saw a flicker of movement near the cabin entrance. It was a figure in a deckhand's uniform, hunched over, trying to slip away off the stern. "Stop him!" I yelled. 2 officers tackled the person to the deck. They struggled violently. Their hat fell off, revealing a head of graying hair. We walked over. The officers turned the person over. It was Jasmine Kim. She was wearing ill-fitting men's work clothes, her face smeared with grease, her lips cracked. There was no trace of the matriarch left. But her eyes were still cold and venomous. "Jasmine Kim, you can't run anymore," I said, standing over her, my voice clear in the sea wind. She stared at me, then suddenly laughed, a strangled, broken sound. "Ilara Yuan, you won. But do you think you've really won? There will always be others after me. This business will never die. As long as I'm here, whoever tries will die." I knelt down, meeting her gaze. "Every woman you murdered will become a stone that sinks people like you to the bottom of the sea." Jasmine Kim clenched her jaw and said no more. The Coast Guard put her in handcuffs and leg irons and led her away. I stood on the deck, watching the first light of dawn break on the horizon. The wind was dying down, the gunshots silenced. Rena came over and handed me a jacket. "It's over." I wrapped the jacket around me and let out a long, slow breath. The string that had been pulled taut inside me for months suddenly snapped. My legs gave out, and I nearly fell. Rena caught me. "It's over," I repeated, the tears finally coming. After her arrest, Jasmine Kim was taken back to Hangzhou and held in a detention center. Her case was supervised directly by the Ministry of Public Security, with Interpol coordinating. Helen was charged with harboring a fugitive, but received a suspended sentence due to her cooperation. Old Chen was sentenced to 11 years for armed resistance and smuggling. The case file for Jasmine Kim was 2 feet thick. She confessed to 17 murders across 8 countries. The women she had passed off as accidents were tour guides, teachers, wealthy heiresses, divorced mothers. I wrote down every one of their names and had the foundation create an archive for them. A month later, I went to Arya's grave. The same osmanthus grove, the same white roses. Rena stood beside me, holding a copy of Jasmine Kim's verdict. "Sis, we got the mastermind too," Rena said, her voice calm, but her eyes were wet. I knelt and placed the roses before the headstone, smiling at the name carved there. "Arya, you can rest in peace now." A gentle breeze blew, scattering a few more osmanthus blossoms. That evening, I was back in my father's study. He was reading a document under the lamp. When he saw me, he took off his glasses. "Is it all done?" he asked. "It's done." I sat beside him and leaned my head on his shoulder, like I used to when I was a child. "Are you tired?" "Tired," I said, closing my eyes, but at peace. "What are your plans now?" he asked, patting my hand. "Focus on the foundation," I said, opening my eyes. "And I want to go to law school." "Law school." My father was surprised. Then he smiled. "Yes. After everything, I've realized that money isn't enough. You have to know the law. Use the law. I want to make sure that people who hurt others can never find a loophole again." My father nodded, saying nothing more. I knew he supported me. The next day, Rena came to say goodbye. She had a new mission: to go to Yunnan and help the foundation establish a border security network. You're not staying in Hangzhou? I was reluctant to see her go. I'm used to being on the move, she said with a smile, handing me something. It was the knob she had taken from the radio on the island. Keep this, a souvenir. I took it and held it in my palm. Come back often. I will. She stepped forward and gave me a tight hug. I watched her walk out of the courtyard and disappear down the alley. Some people are born to wander, but no matter how far they fly, there will always be a light left on for them. 6 months later, the White Rose Foundation opened 2 overseas offices, in Bangkok and Geneva. Our aid network now covered more than 20 countries and had helped over 300 victims. I was accepted into Zhejiang University's law school, an older-than-average student. Rena caught a human trafficker on the border and earned another commendation. Chloe graduated and joined the foundation as a full-time volunteer. She said she wanted to work with me for the rest of her life. A lifetime is a long time, I told her, smiling. But I'm so glad you're here. Jasmine Kim was apparently well-behaved in prison. She sent word through her lawyer twice, asking to see me. I went once. Through the glass, she looked much older. Her hair was completely white, the wrinkles on her face deep. She picked up the phone. Her first words were, "You destroyed Liam's company." "That company was never clean to begin with," I said calmly. "I know," she sighed. "I've done a lot of wrong things in my life. My biggest regret is not letting Liam go far away." "Your biggest regret should be murdering all those people," I corrected her. She looked at me for a moment, said nothing, and hung up. I put down the receiver, stood up, and left. Some people's repentance is just for show. I didn't need to hear it. Another year passed. In early summer, I once again boarded a yacht headed for the Mediterranean. This time, there was no Liam, no Donovan, no Sharon. The people on board were the new friends I had made at the foundation. Rena flew in from Yunnan, tanner, and with an even brighter laugh. We stood on the deck, looking at the azure sea. "Holding the foundation's annual retreat on a yacht again? Isn't that a little ironic?" Rena asked, handing me a glass of champagne. I took the glass and smiled. Same sea, different people. I want the girls who have been through so much to know that some places aren't just about fear. At the other end of the deck, several women who had escaped from abusive homes were leaning against the railing, watching the sea. Their faces held smiles that had been absent for a long time. The yacht sailed into a familiar stretch of water. I looked back. It was where the other yacht had been anchored. "Rena," I said, "I want to scatter some flowers." "Again?" She raised an eyebrow. "This time, it's not for the dead," I smiled. I got a large bag of white rose petals from the cabin and gave half to her. "It's for the living. For all the women who have walked out of the darkness." We went to the stern and scattered the petals into the sea. The wind caught them, and they drifted like snowflakes onto the blue water, carried away by the waves. "Elara Yuan," Rena said, using my full name. You've changed. For the better or for the worse?" "You've become reckless?" she said with a laugh, raising her glass. I raised my glass too, and we clinked them together in the sea breeze. "To being alive," I said. "To being free," she replied. The setting sun dyed the sea a golden red. The yacht sailed on, toward the open water. I knew that ever since that night I was almost pushed into the sea. I had already died once. Every day of this new life was a bonus. On the horizon, a flock of seagulls flew past. I watched them and suddenly smiled. This was my life, truly mine.